Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Tooele Happy Hour podcast starring Jared Anderson and David Weiss. Today's guest, she doesn't have an announcement, but she is exploring some interesting ideas and she's going to share some of them with us today. Carolyn, will you introduce yourself to our lovely audience here in Tooele?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Carolyn Phippen, and I am very seriously looking at the U.S. Senate seat that will be up next year. And what do you want me to start with? Here's the problem. Anybody who's a politician or a potential politician, we know how to talk for hours. So it needs to be directed or I'll just talk for hours.
It seems like most politicians know how to talk for hours and say nothing.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You know, I know. I could do the same.
They're endearing and intriguing and bland. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I hate political speeches. I hate listening to political speeches. I've worked in politics for years and I skip most political speeches.
Yeah.
For that very reason. Nothing gets deep, nothing gets substantive. You don't learn much of anything.
Let me ask you this, Carolyn. First and straight off the bat, we can't make certain statements right now on the show. And there's legal reasons behind that, and we were just talking about them behind the scenes here. Is it dangerous for a normal person to run for political office without a specialized lawyer in political election law?
Federal office, yes. It's really different. You know, in the state of Utah, we don't have a lot of laws that govern... I don't want to say we don't have a lot of laws that govern elections. I mean, we do. But when it comes to candidates, we have a lot of flexibility at the state level and ability to do different things. It is very limited and strict in federal elections, right? In federal, when running for federal office, I'll say.
More so for Republicans than Democrats, or is it
it's the same. It's the same. The laws are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't need to go into
I can say that
differences in the justice application. Well, anyways, so when I talked to you on the phone, you said you're okay covering any subject.
Yeah, well, okay, let's hope.
Let's talk about particular news sets. Let's get a feel for just an imaginary, like say you were a politician on the national stage. How would you deal with right now? The hot topic is, of course, Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that? What is your kind of leanings in what's going on over there in the great quagmire?
Yeah. Well, I can say that it's really clear that there is a lot, and this is probably typical in war, that there are a lot of things we don't know or things that look different than they may really be. And we discovered that earlier this week, right, with that bombing of the hospital.
And let me put that in quotes. The hospital / parking lot. / IDF did it / maybe it was Hamas. Yeah. No, it was what are they saying latestly? It's the Islamic Jihad did it and not Hamas. So there's a third group in there playing around now?
I think there are more than three.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I mean, I don't know if Hezbollah has worked its way down, but, you know, we don't know who's where.
Well, it's not Trump's fault, right?
Oh, hey. We take a stand.
Everything is Trump's fault. You know, it is true. Do you remember, I'm sure all of us remember how we were told for 4 years that he was going to take us to nuclear war. I saw no signs of that. No signs of that. And I have seen a lot of signs of that in the past couple of years that we're headed in that direction. And I think that's concerning and ought to be concerning for every American. Frankly, every person on the planet.
Yeah. I shockingly, yes. There was a comedian in the 80s. What was his name? I'll remember his name as soon as it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But he used to have kind of a skit where he said, kind of the threat in the world, we dig up the craziest person and parade them around as a dead person, but parade them around as president so no one messes with us. And I think the world may have saw Trump as just that loose cannon that might be that crazy person. And nobody played around.
Right. But not crazy enough that they were concerned, but sane enough that they understood that he was serious. And I heard somebody say something the other day that because he was such a good negotiator, he always tried to find what the upside was for the person he was negotiating with.
He found a win for both sides.
Right?
He found an avenue to win, and he didn't look for, which I think is common in this day and age, is like our negotiations with North Korea, is either we go in there too heavy-handed and offer nothing, or we go in and lay out everything, and then they think we're just rolling over and bearing our soft underbelly. And he went in there and said, look, we'll make a deal, but we're both going to have to toe this line. There's going to be a line that's going to have to be towed. Obviously, our line isn't as bad as yours because, America, hey, we are who we are. We spend your GDP in just feeding our army. So, shut up. But it seemed to work. And let's face it. I wasn't a Trump supporter. I'm not, because honestly, it's not about anything Trump did. I just don't think that within our current paradigm we're going to have any significant change that's going to salvage what we're seeing. But he crossed the DMZ. Right. He walked across Freedom Bridge and went over there and had a civilized meeting, which is insane.
Right.
That he did that.
And he was roundly criticized for it by the media.
Of course.
Right. Mm-hmm. But you know what? So let's go back for a minute to what we're seeing right now with Israel.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Because I think every single one of us can agree that the murder of families and children in their homes is wrong. Can we agree to this?
The raid that was targeted against just civilians in their homes and against the kibbutz. For anyone who doesn't know what a kibbutz is, it's a religious communist compound, which is extremely important for their economy, where their economy is not just their economy, where their model of a Jewish state, where anybody of the religious ethnic background, how do you put it, religious background, ethnic, I don't know, but everyone's welcome. So they have these kind of, everyone hates socialism, but in this it works, and it's kind of needed because they have this growth model that has to be available. You know what I'm saying?
So tell me this, I don't know this piece. Is that like government run and organized, or is it separate?
It's religious, isn't it?
It's mostly ran religiously. The government does support them.
Okay.
But they'd be like a little farm community.
Yeah.
So it is communist in nature, but it's not forced communism. It's kind of a religious communalism, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
But they targeted those mostly. Right. And then they fired what? 2,000 rockets in that first day. Those rockets, I don't know how they got them in there. Yeah, I know they're mostly homemade, except those rocket pods they were firing, those were engineered.
Huh. Yeah, I still can't figure out how this happened, and I'm not wise to the ways of war. So it's not surprising that I haven't figured it out, but I haven't come across anybody who has figured it out.
I don't think there's too many avenues, too many circumstances, just like with any war. I mean, we could get the most brilliant minds on this war. They're not going to exactly be able to predict how this would go. I just know that any way you cut it, we're in for a lot of green grass growing.
Yep. Yeah, this is a problem. And I'll tell you what else I think hopefully we can all agree on with what we've seen the past, 2 weeks almost, is the fact that, like, I'm shocked at all of the anti-Semitic statements and behavior I'm seeing. Like, I'm shocked.
It's insane.
I actually, a lot of the claims of racism, anti-Semitism that we see, I think oftentimes people go too far. all the time when they say racism, but even that's anti-Semitic. Oftentimes I think they've gone too far, in pulling things in to being anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
We are seeing absolutely blatant, horrible anti-Semitic statements and behavior from seemingly rational people right now.
I would say the ADL blew their nut on a lot of stuff that didn't count, and now they're going to have a hard time arguing a lot of these things that do.
Yeah.
Like, what is it? What's their name? Is it Rashida Tlaib?
Oh, yeah.
Now, she is
The squad?
ethnically Palestinian. Most of the squad came out against Hamas.
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
AOC came out against what happened, but Rashida Tlaib came out with the mealy mouth. Oh, what do you expect him to do under him? Well, we expect him not to burn babies alive.
At a very minimum.
Let's just lay that as a blanket.
Yes.
I will say, I'm going to give a point to Hamas because no one ever thought of using paragliders the way they did. I have to say, the Hamas Air Force is not very sturdy, but ingenuitive. And I've wanted to say that for a week now. God, I'm glad to get that off.
Just go paragliding and get it out of your system, Jared.
But what they did, just the wholesale annihilation of families in their homes.
Yeah.
It's not like they were on the West Bank, where the West Bank is where you had current day kind of arguments of encroachment.
Yeah, I
of
pulled up a
Israelis.
map when this happened because I thought, okay, I really don't know
But
where.
There are no Israelis occupying any of the Gaza Strip. None. They got pulled out because the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority, they've kind of made peace with Israel. I don't know if they've made peace, but they've just toned it down. And Hezbollah, obviously they're up in what's that country that starts with an L above Israel? Why am I forgetting?
Libya?
Words?
No.
Lebanon?
Lebanon. They're up in
Okay,
Lebanon and they've already ruined Lebanon, so they don't got much to argue with. But you got Hamas down in just the Gaza Strip. They're probably elsewhere. But they're the ones that seem to be, in an uprising right now. And I don't know. I have multiple concerns on this. Of course, I don't want to see Palestinians massacred wholesale.
No, we don't want this for anybody.
No.
Anybody with any humanity does not want to see innocent people murdered. How about that for a starting point, right?
Yeah, just leave it at that.
Pretty simple.
Like I argued on the last show, I think the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip should argue from a point of weakness, just like Martin Luther King did. Argue through peace and try to become a state of Israel. I honestly think they should, but
they won't, Jared.
They would have to sacrifice Hamas to do that.
Well, that's right. That's the problem.
And they voted for him.
They did.
And their sentiment as a normal peasant over there in Palestine is of that perspective, too. And I don't think most Americans can get a grip on that mentality.
No. I say this all the time, perspective is everything. And when it comes to an appreciation for this nation and an understanding of what life is like to others, right? And we are in so many ways, I'm sorry, so naive. Right? And we don't understand that the freedoms we enjoy, the underpinnings of our society that have historically driven toward a moral life with respect for others around us. This is not universal. I think it's universal to man. I don't think it's universal in all societies. So different things are taught and encouraged, and we have to be real about that in order to be able to adequately address the actual things that are going on. Otherwise, we're fools.
I'm going to give you a hot take on that. I don't think it's universal to man. I think it's universal to humans who are descendant of German, ancient German moot and justice codes. Because that's where this is all born from.
Yeah, but wait just a minute, though. But you're talking about culture and society.
Yeah.
It's not universal in cultures or societies. It is. I believe that it is universal to man.
I don't know. I think the average Chinese person would disagree.
But this is. But you're again. And maybe you're not. But I think you're arguing about societal values that are taught.
Well, I think eventually it ingrains in your genes.
Okay. Well, okay. That could be.
I think it just gets ingrained. Like you know how they do studies on do you learn lessons from your parents?
Yep. Well, they have done studies, right? That specific types of behavior does influence.
And I think it comes down. And so the Chinese, they go through what's called legalism. That's their process for societal adjudication. And then, of course, you know, the Islamic culture, they come down with the strong authoritarianism revolving around a religion. The Iberian Peninsula, there's a reason that anything born out of the Iberian Peninsula is historically a place that hasn't been successful on a free market economic stage. And that's because everything was for the Iberian Peninsula. You know, you could be a colony of Spain, but everything you did had to go to Spain. It was a mercantilism system, you know. And Germany, in the, you know, just past the caveman days, practiced a kind of they called it a moot system, where if they had a king, the king wasn't the all authority. And the people would gather and have a vote, and that got carried over into England, you know, through the Vikings and through, you know, I mean, let's face it, their royal family's German as well. Mm-hmm. And so it comes that way. Not saying that the Germans hasn't fallen away from that a couple times in history, but we don't need to dig in too deep. But, you know.
No, we don't, Jared.
But, you know, these things have been there forever. I mean, we're talking 500 BC when legalism is born out of a bonding of Confucianism and Taoism, and that's where they get that growth of that. You know, here I am sounding like a professor. Believe me, I don't know shit. I listen to other people that know stuff.
But what about the Palestinian perspective? So I as a human being believe that we have 4 properties that we can all share in common, and that's, I don't like people to take my stuff. I don't care where you come from. I just don't like it, and they won't either. I don't like people to try to kill me. I don't want to be raped. And I think when I keep a contract, it makes me a better person. And I think that is a property that is throughout all of humanity. Now, right now, we have people killing each other back and forth. Palestine and Israel and these societies can't get along. They just can't. And ever since I was well, I don't even think I was born when
that's
that
right.
conflict
long
was.
Before that.
Yeah. So here we are in a stage where the Palestinians just really gave a good throttle to a very powerful Israeli nation. And, you know, I would say it's negligible of a government to allow such hostile nations to border them and exist. But yet Israel, even after they were attacked by 5 different armies, allows Palestine to exist and continues to get harassed by Palestine. And let's face it, I mean, the Israelis were victorious during that war where 5 countries ganged up against them and they beat them down. I don't think the Roman Empire would have been so kind to Palestine if it was the other in that historical perspective. But Israel has allowed Palestine to exist, and this is how they are treated now, this current day. We have to take a side somewhere. I think we all have to take a side, because if we say, oh, we don't want people to get hurt, I think it's immature, because I know if someone is releasing lions and tigers and bears into my property that lives next door, and I have a family to protect, I'm going to kill them if I can win and if I can preserve my family. it's just my natural instinct as a biological human being to want to protect my family and myself. And here we are. This is the situation that we're in. But you're the candidate, and you're going to have to take a stand one way or the other.
Well, I'm not a candidate right now.
I mean, you're not the candidate.
If you were a candidate.
If.
There you go. That's a great question. No, it's clear to me. And here's the thing. Again, there is not a country of Palestine. Think about this.
There is not.
This is a group of people who live within Israel. And
I wouldn't even put it that way. They're a group of people that lived within an empire that collapsed at the end of World War I, and then was carved up and forced to live together by Great Britain.
Yes.
And then Great Britain brought in a radical imam, or whatever they want to call him, a radical, and that radical fomented hatred of the Jewish people that they were living. The Palestinians prior to that were like welcoming to the Jewish people to come there because they had been persecuted everywhere else.
So I don't think I knew that piece.
And then in 1929, it boiled over, and that was kind of the first revolution. And it's insane to read about.
Yeah. Well, are you talking about the Muslim Brotherhood?
This is before the Muslim Brotherhood existed.
Okay. So, years ago, I studied a lot of this. It's been a long time. And frankly...
clear as mud, even when you study it.
I know. But I do think that it's really easy to say that those things that we saw 2 weeks ago are wrong, that they ought to be punished. There have to be repercussions, and Israel has a right to defend itself and its people and do whatever it takes to protect them going forward.
I do have a hard question.
Okay.
So, word on the street is, and there's documentation and stuff to validate this, was that Netanyahu supported and aided the creation of Hamas to get rid of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. How do we manage that?
Well, you know what? I don't know that we need to manage it. I think that may be part of the problem.
Right? I'm kind of with you on, I think we need not manage any of that going on over there.
That's right.
We need to look at that as an overused outhouse in the canyon. We're going to drive down the road and find somewhere else.
Here's the thing. I think that we are involving ourselves in a lot of things right now, and we have historically, right? A lot of wars and inter-country feuds. And anytime the United States of America, with our power and our money and our influence, enters into a battle, I think things get blown up bigger. We create more problems down the road. How many times have we been on one side of a fight, and within a decade or two, we're on the other because we created a monster?
And we don't need to talk about Al-Qaeda today.
This has happened repeatedly.
We don't even have to talk about Sigmund Rhee if you want to go all the way back to 1950.
No, we don't.
So truly, I do think that it's becoming increasingly clear to a lot of us who may have at one point 10 or 15 years ago had a whole lot of trust in our government and believed in everything that they told us. I think it's becoming increasingly clear to more and more of us that a couple things, that we've interfered in a lot of places around the world where we had no business, and it probably had nothing to do with the security of the United States or the good of the United States, but maybe more to do with the good of certain people involved. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as a potential issue. And I think also it's clear that we will not continue as a stable country, if you can call us that right now. We are on the verge of something really different and a whole lot of things changing in this world. And a big part of it is because we have flooded the world with dollars in an unbelievably irresponsible way that is killing us here at home. It is killing not only developed nations around the world, but nations that are struggling where their currency against the dollar is losing more and more value every single day. And these are people already living in, huts with no floors. What we're doing is hurting a whole lot of people around the world, and we've got to rein it in. It's time.
When you talk about reining it in, are you talking about us paying our debts?
Here's the thing. I'm talking about us not borrowing so much money anymore and starting to be a little bit responsible. Just a little. Give me a little. Show me a path. Here's one of the biggest issues I have, right? We bring in like $5 trillion a year. We spend $7 trillion. I have yet to see anybody tell me like where and when and how that tapers off. So
how those numbers match?
Yeah.
I just want to know, you actually believe we only spend $7 trillion? I just want to ask that. I mean,
we do know there are slush funds.
That's the numbers according to the same government that said we're not in inflation.
Yeah, well, this is true. And I think some things came out a few years ago about how in the last downturn, we flooded the world with a whole lot more dollars. I haven't looked at that actually in a couple years since it first came out.
I can't imagine Pakistan got whatever numbers of millions of dollars to study transgenderism in Pakistan.
Well, think about this. I was over in Africa a couple years ago. And
where in Africa?
I was at the time, oh my gosh, over on the eastern side, and I'm going to blank.
Okay.
It's Friday.
All right.
But give me, I'll come up with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Abu Dhabi. Well,
no. But it's
was it sub-Saharan or?
It was right about the middle of the continent. I'm going to pull it up.
Okay,
I'm going to pull up a map.
Please
and I'll tell you.
I want to go to Africa. I want to see that.
My husband used to do some business over in Nigeria, which is totally on the other side.
Yeah.
But I can't. I'm sorry. This is awful. But I'll tell you, one of the things that really disturbed me as I was driving around was there would be clinics that you'd have Planned Parenthood messages, and I knew this stuff was funded by the United States of America, and this stuff there would be totally inappropriate photographs, not photographs, like paintings on the walls around some of these clinics. And then there was even, I got some pictures, there were construction sites that were totally U.S. financed. And this is a country where they don't have regular electricity, but we were dumping all kinds of money into all kinds of projects. And we've seen what happened in Haiti when, wasn't it when the Clinton Foundation went in?
Yeah, I'm sure every dime donated went right to Haiti.
Do you know what, though? One of the things that they did was there was a bunch of rice that was purchased from Arkansas. I mean, Arkansas apparently produces a lot of rice, right?
I heard Texas is the best place on earth for rice, too.
Could be.
That's a wild story to me.
But let me tell you, a lot is in Arkansas. Who's from Arkansas? Whose friends grow rice in Arkansas? I don't know. But all I do know is the Clinton Foundation bought a bunch of rice. And some of this also happened with solar. And they flooded the country with rice that was purchased, if I remember correct, with rice that was purchased in the U.S., they put local producers out of business.
Yeah. Well, let's do it on a smaller market. You remember Tom's Shoes?
Yes.
Where if you bought a pair, they'd send a pair to a needy family in Africa. And Africa screamed, please stop. And you know what the issue in Africa is right now?
What?
Lack of cobblers. Hard to believe.
Oh, wow. Yep, makes sense. Yeah, we totally... we change societies and economies when we insert ourselves. We change cultures we insert ourselves.
If you take a farmer out of the field for 2 seasons, he's not farming there again.
No.
That's just it.
You know, I got to say it. This is the perfect segue for me.
Oh, okay.
So here I hold a can of Coca-Cola, right? And we're talking about changing the market. Now, you might remember in the 80s when Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they started using corn syrup rather than sugar. And this is because our farm bill implemented a process where all the imported sugar into our economy was going to be super high taxed or just not allowed. And it protected our U.S. farmer sugar growers from losing their jobs. Now, just so you know, if you go to Mexico, they'll have sugar in their soda or ketchup. If you go to Canada, these communist countries I'm talking about, they have sugar in their ketchup
Canada
and in their
doesn't have
soda.
ketchup, they have mayonnaise.
That's not true. I've been there. I looked. And then if you come to America, you'll find corn syrup in ketchup and in soda. So let me ask you this.
You have to purchase special to get sugar, real cane sugar.
Yeah.
So we protect our sugar growers in America from losing their jobs by artificially giving them a monopoly through government and raising the price.
We protect our sugar growers or we protect the corn farmers?
Maybe a little bit of both.
I think it's protecting the corn
But it's the sugar growers that lobby these people that win Senate seats.
Yep.
Those people. And I'm going to ask you this. Let's say I'm going to throw this off the hip. Perhaps you one day win a Senate seat somehow. And you have the farm bill in front of you, and you can vote to protect our American jobs for corn and sugar, or you can allow the free market to operate and put sugar back into our Coca-Cola. From your perspective as a Republican, where would you stand on that particular type of a vote?
So I have to tell you this. It was Zambia.
Zambia
is where I was.
Just south of Mozambique.
Look at you.
Mozambique, the nation that gave us 2 to the chest, 1 to the head.
What? I don't know this story.
It used to be called Mozambique.
Oh, okay. So anyway, but no, I have a problem with subsidies. Right? That's not what our government was set up to do. And the role of the federal government, I'll tell you, I was out to lunch with Mike Lee a couple months ago, and he said to me, I used to work for Senator Lee, and he said, Carolyn, what's the role of the federal government? And it really caught me off guard, right? And I said, of course, constitutionally. And I am ashamed to admit my list was not as long as it should have been. And he said, go home and read the Constitution.
Yeah. Well,
so I did. And I'll tell you that we are where we are we have problems in a host of things when it comes to government. But so many of the problems that we have are driven by the fact that we fund all kinds of things that we shouldn't be funding. And the more we empower government, the greater they will insert themselves into our lives always, right? And I think that from a conservative standpoint and a constitutional standpoint, it is not the role of the federal government to take money from taxpayers to give to any special interests in a way that distorts the free market. To give to any special interest, period. But subsidies distort the free market.
Yeah, and I would argue, I think we need to pull governments out of our education system.
Federal government.
I'm good with pulling all governments out. I think
I actually would be good with that too.
I think education should rise and fall on the merits of what it produces. I think having any government in there has...
Yeah.
You know what? In a free market system, you're not going to have gender studies majors.
No, you never would.
It wouldn't survive.
No.
You might have a gender studies additional class you can take that has nothing to do with your degree, but you wouldn't have gender studies majors.
No.
You wouldn't have any of those studies made. Now, there are some downsides. We probably wouldn't have anthropologists or music degrees very often.
Yeah.
Because we would, because if government was out of it, these people would have to go to a bank and apply for a loan. And a bank's going to go, you wanted to get a degree in art and you want us to
hold
loan
on
you
a
money
minute.
for that?
Think about it. Things used to be substantially more affordable. right?
Until
until the government got involved.
There you go.
Education is the perfect example of that. Higher ed.
And back then, it was only rich kids that became anthropologists. It was only rich kids that went and got a music degree. So the other one, like let's say you wanted a music degree, you had to forego that if you were poor and get an engineering degree so that your kids could go get the music degree. Mm-hmm. And then that kid would fall out of the market, not make money, and his kid would start the cycle over. And yes, it is not fair. Nothing's equal. We can't expect fairness.
No.
Yeah. Nobody said this was going to be fair.
Do you know what? So my parents both grew up in Utah. I grew up in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm sorry. Go on.
Hey.
Don't be sorry, Jared.
And do you know
Actually, you guys have water and beautiful lakes, and I heard the fishing there is great.
Yes, the forests are beautiful.
If
the ticks don't get you.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I say this all the time. I grew up a Mormon in New York. I don't have the problem that a lot of Utahns have, and that is backbone, right?
Yeah.
I've lived here for over 35 years. In fact, I just have to give you this little aside. So, and then I'll get back to my story. But I live in Draper, and in Draper was founded by Ebenezer Brown. I am a direct descendant from Ebenezer Brown, who was born in the same area of New York where I was. So anyway, what's your question?
Well, let's remember Joseph was from Connecticut / New York,
but the golden plates were in New York.
Yeah. Why don't we have Ebenezer popping up as a popular name for kids nowadays?
That's a great question.
It's that Christmas tale story.
Do you think that killed it?
Yeah.
I have 5 boys, and I didn't contemplate that name, even for a middle name with a single one of them. Yeah, it's kind of sad. It's not sad. It's not sad at all.
It's a long name. How do you even abbreviate that?
Imagine kindergarten and that bad boy. My dad wanted to name me Melchizedek Ulysses. And thank God
your mom saved
you. Stepped in and dodged that bullet.
My dad wanted to name me Roper.
Roper's a lot better than... Imagine kindergarten. You can spell that. Try popping Melchizedek or...
Melchizedek? Was it the priesthood?
Oh, yeah, something like that.
Melchizedek?
Yeah.
Sounds like something out of Dungeons and Dragons or something,
It does. It does.
Yeah. So, but I'll tell you. So, my father was born and raised in Layton, Utah, and this is probably my father's dad. My grandfather was born in 1873.
Great year. Loved it.
Hold on. So your dad, would have been your dad. So your grandfather was probably pushing like. What?
So he was 97 the year I was born.
Okay.
And died that year.
How old was he when he had your father?
So he
Are you the last born of a last born of a last born?
No, he had a second wife who was my grandmother. His first wife died of cancer.
Okay.
And many years later, he married a much younger woman and had a second family.
Well, I had a grandfather. This guy needs a statue in his honor. Good Mormon stock. So he had 14 wives, lived in Lake Point, right? His final wife, he had 12 kids with his final wife when he was in his 70s. Wow. And or I don't know, 4 wives and 12 kids, whatever. But this guy was in his 70s, coughing kids out. I was like,
can you imagine taking care of little kids?
They didn't have corn syrup back then.
They didn't.
I bet he didn't.
They were healthier.
I'll bet he didn't take care of a kid one. He probably acknowledged the child was born, and that was it.
Okay, but so here's what I'm going to say. So my dad grew up in Layton. His father was, much older, and he would ride his bike. So my dad has a PhD from Cornell, but for his undergrad, he would ride his bike into the University of Utah to go to school.
From Layton?
From Layton. I won't say every day, but
even if you do it once, that's.
Think about what people used to do to get an education. Yeah. And when my parents got married, they'd both served missions. They actually met on their missions in Germany, but had never been back east. My dad got accepted to Cornell University. His mother gave them a car for their wedding. They got married and drove to New York. Never been there. Never been there. Like, I just don't think our kids today understand and appreciate.
Think us today could live.
You're right.
I don't think I could live like I did in the 90s.
I get angry if my password doesn't go through on the first time when I log into the educational portholes. And I'm just like, my grandkids will never understand the suffering. You know? But I hate to be the fly in everyone's preparation H, but question for you politically again.
Yeah.
Back on that table. Trent Stagg is running for Mitt Romney's seat. And he seems to have a pretty powerful campaign message. Supposedly, you know, if you were to explore such options, of course, what would your message be different than to what his is? Because so far I see a lot of similarities between you two.
No, you know what? With conservatives, there always will be similarities. And so what it comes down to, I think, is abilities to persuade, whether that, look, here's the thing. The executive branch is very different from the legislative branch, right? We all know this. Well, it should be. But as an executive, there are certain decisions that you can make and things that you can do that are different than when you work in the legislative branch and have to work with others around you and figure out ways to get them to come your way. Right? So I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples. So
yeah, like you would get to rub elbows with Schiff.
Okay, so I'll tell you. So when Greg Hughes was Speaker of the House, I worked for him, legislative branch. I worked with the legislature and the majority in the House, which is the Republicans. Thank goodness. And I had to help them when they had important issues, whether it be leadership or members of that body, that the issues that they needed to explain to the public, or if there was a leadership issue that they wanted to help the body understand, then I would put together, not only, I do a lot of the research, sometimes I'd put together the messaging and help persuade people to go the right way by giving them good information. Good information drives good decisions. Hughes used to say that all the time, right?
And then CNN and MSNBC comes right behind you and are extremely honest and faithful in their reporting so much.
Yeah, well, we all know how that goes, but I think there are two pieces to this. And that is that we not only have to be able to, in a legislative branch, and then after that I worked for Mike Lee. And I'll tell you right now, I'm just stepping away from my current position, which is, it's an organization that was founded by a number of entrepreneurs, and many of them Silicon Slopes area, who started seeing changes in our state that they weren't really happy with, and hired me to run this organization. And we focus on, from an educational perspective, with elected officials and with members of the public, individual liberties and free markets. And so we, in fact, here's the perfect example. There's some legislation that we're working on this year, and I address it from a place that's different than most Republicans. And that is, well, I'm not going to give it away, actually, because I'm still in the middle of working on some of this. But let me say this to you. But people know what I'm working on. But this is the piece that I'll say to you is, the way that we persuade people matters. And I think that after the last 6 years or 10 years where there's been so much angst in our society politically, and everything has become political, that's probably been about 15 years, where politics have entered every part of our lives.
I would argue it started about halfway through Bush, when people started recognizing the issues in Afghanistan and Iraq are bigger than they seem. I think that's really when it started. When we saw all this money being poured over there and a lot of dishonesty, when you could recognize, because metal was touching meat over there, and that makes it so that dishonesty is more recognizable.
Yeah.
And then we see, the banks are over here screwing us, and then the government gives them money.
Bails them out.
And so everyone goes, all right, screw you guys. and then the other party does the exact same thing.
Yep. Yeah. No, you're right. But I'll tell you, I think that as a result of all this angst that people feel, we feel it in our personal lives. We feel it in our politics. And some people like to talk about it from a place of division. We need to be united, not divided. In a free society, it's good to not agree on everything. That means we are free.
Well,
right?
it means you're free, and also it leaves options open for finding a better way.
This is the only way that we find the best solutions is through conversation, right?
Yeah.
But here's what I think people are tired of, the bomb throwers. And I think that there is a place, and people are recognizing it more and more, for people who they take firm stands because their stands are based in principle and well thought out policy. But they also understand how important it is to persuade and help the regular guy on the ground understand why this issue matters to them, how it impacts their life, and why this is the right solution. We need more of that in our politics. And so I always shy away. Not only shy away, I completely resist and reject where we've gone politically in these past years, where people point the finger and call names instead of discussing issues. That really bothers me. I think that if I were to run, that's a big piece of what I bring to the table. I have deep policy experience. I understand the issues. I have thought them through. It took me, I was not an affiliated Republican my entire life. I have been at this point for many years, but I thought through every single issue individually. And it's funny, I mentioned this before we went on, but most or many of my favorite people growing up and in my young adulthood were like hippie leftists. And I never agreed with them politically, but we had the most interesting conversations, right?
Well, and hippie leftists when we were growing up allowed you to live your life.
Yes. Yeah, well, that was the essence
difference.
of everything they believed. It's very different from what we see today. I shouldn't call them hippie, but they were hippies. I don't know that leftist is the right word. I think I take that back. That's what we're seeing today. It was hippie Democrats, right? That's a different breed. And I love those people because they just love everybody. And their ideas oftentimes don't have the most practical application.
Man,
but
you had to dig deep to pull that sentence.
I'm going to write that one down.
But I loved the conversations, and truly, some of these people are some of my favorite people in my life. In fact, I said to my husband once a number of years ago, I said, why are my favorite people always like hippies? Like, what is it, right? But and there's something I see in them that no one has ever seen in me. I mean, let's be clear, that I am the furthest thing from that. But I am drawn to some of these people, even though their political ideas don't quite agree with mine. But I love the conversation. We don't have enough of that. We need more of that. We need more people willing to have that conversation. And I think that the way I grew up, the kinds of conversations that I had in my home, my parents were not growing up, they are now, they were not overtly political, but they were always about philosophy, political philosophy and ideas. Our lives were filled with those kinds of discussions. And I always was just kind of thinking about that kind of thing, having those conversations with my friends, which may be odd for high schoolers. I didn't study that much, but I would have those kinds of conversations with my friends. Like, I found them engaging. And most of my friends didn't agree with me. So I think that gave me skills that just don't exist for a lot of people today.
You have to paddle upstream when people don't agree with you. And if you can logically converse with the people that don't agree with you, you can find ways to negotiate a peace treaty. And when you swim upriver, you get stronger. If you just go with the echo chamber, you're going to get flaccid and just go along with the mob. And I see a lot of that going on today.
Yeah, there's a lot. And people oftentimes will just go with the mob because it's easier or because they don't want to dig deep and think.
Or sometimes in some circumstances or marketplaces, if you don't go with the mob, your welfare is at jeopardy.
Yeah.
Your job. If you're a teacher, could you imagine speaking up as a conservative? I can't even imagine being a male.
Can you imagine speaking up as just a regular Democrat as a teacher?
Right.
And not a radical,
Imagine being a male teacher nowadays. It's got to be difficult.
Not judging the Bill of Rights on whether it was written by exclusively white men.
Yeah, that's such a funny way to measure things, right?
Sure.
Somebody said that to me the other day about something, and it wasn't their position, but it was a position that somebody had brought
I'm
up to them.
surprised we can hear them with their
Oh, wait,
head
it was
that
you.
far. Yeah.
It was you telling me about an interview.
I'm surprised we can hear them
Yeah.
say that with their head that far up their fourth point of contact.
I got to make that a TikTok video.
I'm surprised we can actually hear them say. You'd think it'd just like, because literally, I mean.
Yeah, it's just such an odd way to view the world. And it is damaging and dangerous. It doesn't bring us together.
Yeah.
These people claim they want unity, but that way of thinking only divides and tears us apart.
Diversity means something totally different
I
to
know.
them. But they don't look at any idea based on
The merits.
not the merits, the pathway, and the outcomes.
Yeah.
Their ideas are only based on feelings. I don't know. Jonathan Haidt, I think he should be mandatory reading. His book, The Righteous Mind, should be mandatory reading.
I know his name, but I haven't read that book.
Yeah, and you should. It's it's kind of a dry treat. It's not too dry. It's pretty good.
I read a lot of dry stuff.
But if you're into policy, good heck.
Have you ever read Atlas Shrugged?
Okay, here's the thing. I own Atlas Shrugged.
That dry. Come on.
I own Atlas Shrugged. I have never been able to get through it. No.
Well, Jonathan Haidt, he explains that you're kind of born with the mind you have. And it's kind of genetic. It follows down a path. It can be changed through life experiences, but you're kind of born with it. And there are different values that humans have that fall into the different camps. And the leftist mind values care and harm differently than the right does. And libertarians, they just care about freedom. That's it. They don't care. The rest of the stuff,
Unless they just want to smoke marijuana.
it's all about freedom. What do you mean unless? That fits in
that's
with
it,
that.
right.
But and there's been studies done that a person with left leaning in their thoughts will care about a stranger before they care about their own family member.
Oh, that's interesting.
That is wild.
That's interesting. Okay, this is funny though, because this ties into the whole Ukraine thing. I don't want to go to Ukraine necessarily. I mean, go to this issue
Do it.
necessarily. But here's the thing: and even Israel. So I've seen this. I have concerns. Okay, I'm going to go back in time. So I remember my older sister telling me once when she was a student at BYU. I was as well. But when she was at BYU, she was in a married student ward. And there was a woman in the ward. I've never forgotten this story because
For
this
those
is the
of you
essence
who
of
are
this.
Mormon, a ward is your church group, your localized group where you have a bishop like a pastor. We do have some listeners that aren't Mormon.
It's your local
Great.
church.
But your
local
ward
church.
is your company, for you military guys, that you're assigned to. Okay.
So, this woman had like 3 young children, and my sister would tell me how she would load her kids up oftentimes in the morning. They weren't properly fed or dressed or their hair done, but she would drive around and give things to like homeless people because that was like her being a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And she defined being a good person by what she did for people outside of her family. But that took her away from caring for the most fundamental
Her
responsibility
own
in her
children.
life, which was her children.
Which
And-
her children got neglected, and I'll bet if you took a look at those children today, I'll bet there are some signs that happened.
that happened. Here's the thing. I say all the time, the more government focuses on those things that are not its fundamental duty, the less they focus on those things that are its fundamental duty. And legislators like to say all the time, by the way, to the guy wearing the new flag, legislators like to say all the time, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. You know what? But you never do, because over time, always the most fundamental duties become neglected at the cost, or that is the cost for the focus on things that are not fundamental duties. Do you remember when Salt Lake City, maybe you don't, I just assume everyone's as old as I am, but Salt Lake City at one point, I remember they decided to have this big focus on climate change in city government. And within a year or two, people were complaining that there were issues with garbage pickup. And I thought, right there, absolutely, this is how this goes down every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Every time.
Yep.
So that's interesting that you say that, because I think I've read some of his stuff, but I haven't read that book, I know. And that is an interesting little data point.
The Righteous Mind. I think it's an important book to read, because it gives you clear thought when you're talking to someone, especially or even someone who's deeper into your side than you are. It gives you clear thought into their motivations.
Yeah.
I think it would be as important for business people as Sun Tzu's The Art of War. You know, where that gives you a perspective on setting up situations to succeed. This one gives you perspective on relationships and how to hone those in.
Hey, Carolyn, my friend Chad wants to know if you like my shirt.
Yeah.
Should I tell you? Should I read?
So Chad says, let her share her thoughts on the state flag. Spoiler alert, she backs a ballot initiative to restore Utah's state flag.
Who said that? Oh, Chad said that.
Yes.
Yeah, have you guys signed it? Because I actually have a book.
I have one,
Yeah,
and I'm trying to get it filled.
Good.
You got to go hang
I'm
out
proud of you.
at the liquor store like they did the first time. But yes.
So here's the thing. I just, at my core, feel like a couple things. That was, not only was that a waste of our tax dollars, but this is, when I had some I work closely with the legislature. I have great relationships with a whole lot of legislators. And there was one who said, what's the big deal? There were some who were arguing online, the same one, who was arguing online that it was a waste of time, members of the public, to spend so much time trying to overturn this new flag. And my response to that in my conversations was, if it is a waste of time for the people's voice to be heard on such an irrelevant issue, all the more reason you're making our case that it was a complete and total waste of your time up at the legislature and our tax dollars, over $500,000, to change the flag. And let's go back to fundamental duty.
That's a very good point.
Right?
If it's so unimportant, why did you do it?
Why did you do it? And why, right? I mean, seriously, we have I just published an op-ed in the Deseret News with Thomas Young, who's an economist, a month ago or so, that talks about the fact that we have $130 million state shortfall. State revenue shortfall. We had $5 billion extra dollars this year. Now, I don't think you can point the finger at state government and say you spent improperly, although I think we should have gotten that money back. This is because we're going into a downturn, and revenue, which is the money that comes into the government, is less than what was projected.
I asked that. Who did I ask that of? Someone running. I was like, it was local, but they talked about how they're raising the wages for police officers and city workers, which, noble as it is, I'm like, we're hitting a recession. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do?
That's right.
In the next year? Because we're going to see, in the end of that, we're going to see either the government goes deep into debt.
Well, and we can't in the state.
Or they make my wallet lighter.
That's right.
Which is generally what they do. Or they release employees.
Yeah.
And those are your three options when you hit a recession.
And can I tell you something else? That in the past decade, our state spending has increased 170%. And if you include federal money, it's over 200%. So if taxes get raised, there's no excuse for that. Yeah. We have increased government spending through the roof. And the fact that we are moving into a recession, I literally I do have chickens, but they're not yet producing eggs. They're only 4 months old. And I am just biding my time waiting for those eggs. I had to get eggs late at night the other night, so I couldn't go to Costco or Sam's. And I spent $4.79 for 1 dozen eggs.
Yeah.
$5 for a dozen eggs. Yeah. I saw a statistic recently that eggs are up 299% in like the past 2 years.
How many chickens did they kill during COVID?
That's right. And
they killed them because our shipping system has started to fall apart and was having hiccups. You can't keep livestock past their sell-by date. It becomes an extra expense. There's only one option, or the farmer goes under feeding extra chickens he can't get rid of.
Well, do you know what else though? The federal government requires, I've talked to Carson Jorgensen about this. Have you guys ever had Carson on?
We have not.
He is a farmer and used to be, prior to the current GOP chair, so the last 2 years, he was the state GOP chair. Mm-hmm. And Carson told me that there was a plant and so he's been dealing with the federal government his whole life, right? When it comes to livestock. I think he said that they stopped raising turkeys because the federal government is so strict that you end up killing so many turkeys because if one little thing, birds are difficult apparently,
they are,
right?
Yeah.
So I was told that there was a plant.
Upton Sinclair.
Yes, that there was a plant here in Utah where 1 million birds were killed, 1 million turkeys were killed due to bird flu, and they would not. Carson told me this other piece about turkeys. They don't allow you to say, well, can we test every one of them, even if we kill them? Mm-hmm. Can we go in and test them? And if they don't have bird flu, put them on the market? The answer is no. Yeah. If you have one case of bird flu, you kill them all, and they are just lost. You receive nothing. All of that in the hole, you have those massive losses. That kind of thing is really hurting our ability to feed ourselves and our people. But for that kind of money to be spent on the flag, when we are heading into a recession, and everyone should have seen this coming, we knew even if it wasn't this year that it would be next year. Like we knew this was coming.
They printed 1/3 of the money over the history of the United States. Yeah. 1/3 of the money was printed in 3 years.
Yes.
A recession, because of inflation, has to happen.
Has to.
And then you add all the COVID restrictions on top of it. You add the breakdown of our supply chain on top of it. You add the breakdown of the global supply chain on top of it. A recession is getting out easy.
Yes.
It has to happen. It is a law. It's a law of physics, seriously.
But here's the thing. We've been playing so many games with the market since pre-2008, 2009.
Since 1913. Go on.
Right. You are correct. This builds over time, and we're now at the breaking point.
Remember, the Fed promised you make us, and we'll have no more boom bust cycles.
That's right. I know. Don't you like how that worked out?
Got bigger.
Can I tell you what I did last fall? I built a greenhouse, and this spring I bought chickens. So that's how much I trust our economy.
I like it.
What? Let me ask you.
How many firearms did you not buy and not lose in a body of water?
I don't know anything about firearms.
Okay, I like it.
Boating accident, right?
Yeah. So Rod and Gun Club.
Yeah, we get in boating accidents all the time around here.
Here's the thing. I don't know that you'd want me shooting anything, but it's okay. I try.
I want everybody shooting something.
No, this is true. Okay.
So the Federal Reserve is currently under... I wouldn't say it's under attack, but there's potential for competition through a nuisance decentralized currency called Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And we're passing lots of legislations to kind of like throw pebbles of dust into the motors that make Bitcoin operate. Do you think the Federal Reserve deserves to tolerate this kind of competition in our economy?
I'm not sure that they are tolerating it. I have so many questions about their own creation of, crypto, whether that be Bitcoin or something. Like, I just don't even know what's true anymore when it comes to cryptocurrency. I just have to tell you, I have no idea. I don't know. I don't, look, we all know, wasn't it, did Janet Yellen say, I remember somebody in this administration, and it may have been her, talked about the CBDC. Mm-hmm. Did she actually come out and say something about CBDC?
Those I don't want. I don't want the government to...
Oh, gosh, no.
I mean...
No.
They've already got one, because if... I know we say printers go burr, but they don't print money.
Right.
The money is just generated. Every... people.
On balance sheets.
Yes. Every time you run your credit card, money's created. Every time you get a car loan, money's created. Remember, we're in a fractional reserve banking system, which means...
I wondered if that's what you were talking about when you said that.
They have to have 10% of their leverage in holdings.
Yeah.
But what's that 10% now?
Right.
It's all pretend numbers. And over the past 13 years, it was on 0% interest.
Right.
So
that's super realistic, by the way.
Yeah. So and the 0% interest didn't come to us paying the bills. The 0% interest came to the banks of origination saying, and actually the Fed was calling them and saying, you have to take this money this go around. So every time you get a car loan, a house loan, that money pops into existence.
Right.
At least, according to our fractional reserve banking, at least 90% of it. So if you get a home loan for $500,000, what is it, $478,000 pops into existence that day.
Yes.
And then, to top all that off, we all got checks. We all got, 3 checks during COVID. It's insane when you think about it.
It's insane.
So we're looking at, I know a lot of people are against modern monetary theory, and I don't know near enough about it to argue it, but I would argue we're in it.
We are in it. Like, we knew when we were entering. Well, at least I did. I think you guys probably did. Like, no, this is MMT. They said it would be.
The minute the computer was invented, we were in it.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? I did talk to some pretty smart people, lawmakers, and I said, this is MMT. I didn't meet many people who knew what MMT was, modern monetary theory, right? That's part of the danger.
But
it's just the flooding the market with money that doesn't exist until you create it.
It's where you don't rely on revenue to fund government.
Correct.
And here's my issue. Why am I taxed at 55% then?
Right.
Why do them sons of bitches think that they have to have their hand in my back pocket every time I move about this world?
Because they need the 10%.
No.
I know, that's the base.
I think it's to make you grovel. I think it's so once a year you kneel before your king.
The jizz
because they don't need it. They don't need it for anything. I think it's so once a year.
Well, no, they actually do need it. Here's the thing.
Local governments do.
That's
I don't
true.
even think then, because the feds, they just throw money at them anyway. And local governments, they can get
only
it
for
through
California, Jared. Only for California. They can get it through
so many other means.
No, but it always is a form of taxation. And the fact of the matter is that when the system was set up with taxes, that is what funded government.
Okay, yeah, taxes. I could see a sales tax, localized sales tax, a business tax.
Right.
I could see a localized gas tax. All those things exist. But I think, honestly, here's my one thought, is why they tax us. It's so that once a year we recognize who is God on earth. Seriously.
It could be.
I think that's... Why do you think they have it so blind so that you can't just say, oh, I have this much money flow through my wallet. Here's how much I owe you.
Oh, well, you know about that, don't you? That was designed... Now I'm rusty on my history, but that was designed by whichever president put in place... No, It was after the income tax was established, or as they were thinking about establishing it. One of the really wealthy store owners who had chains all over the country consulted with the president. I can't remember who was who, but I remember this story, and gave him the idea of, this is the way to do it so that people will actually pay it, because they were afraid that people wouldn't pay it.
The reason they have the automatic withdrawal of taxes is for that. That's under FDR.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying, why do you think it is that we don't have a tax system that's recognizable and understandable? There is not one human being on this planet who knows our tax system.
Yeah, but I'll tell you why that is. And we know this. And then I want to address
we got to go
one
through
of the
comments.
questions on here. Because about the bombing, we totally know it was a hoax. I don't want, somebody made a comment, the recent hospital bombing was found to be a hoax.
The parking lot bombing?
Yeah, we know it was the parking lot. I want to make sure that they understand. I understand that.
Let's remember, it was the IDF who did it according to Hamas. And then we got phone records, and now it's the Islamic Jihad.
But let's just be clear, it was not the Israelis, and it wasn't a hospital.
No, it was a parking lot.
It was a parking lot.
Might have been adjacent to a hospital.
Yes.
No, 500 people didn't die.
Right.
Might have wounded 15.
Can I just say that's interesting, too, that there were reports of 500 people dead, and it turns out, in the light of day, no hospital was bombed, and a fraction of that potentially were killed. Like, people were just making up stuff. Anyway.
MSNBC and CNN did that. Oh, my stars.
I know.
Who'd have thunk it? Anyways.
But they also do the same thing.
I think, honestly, our tax system is designed like that just to make you scared, to make you nervous, and to make you know who's in charge.
But here's, that could be. But when you talk about how complicated it is, let's take a look for a minute at the tax reform that the state legislature passed a few years ago that ended up being overturned after the people gathered enough signatures to overturn it.
The food, what was it?
It included the food tax, a very much increased food tax on a percentage basis, as well as a very much increased gas tax on a percentage basis, in addition to taxing services.
Yep.
So, and here's the thing. Good tax policy is, the thinking is that good tax policy is lower rate, wider base,
what is
right?
it called? What is it, Freeman principle?
Milton Friedman?
No, it's not Friedman. It's, God, if anybody out there in internet land knows, but there's a principle that there is a point where there's a fulcrum on taxes.
Yes. The more, it's always about 11%.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Is it 11 or 21?
Yeah, I bet I'm saying
11 sounds
only
good to
about
me.
55.
11, no, but I mean 11% of GDP.
Yeah.
But that sounds too low, so I think I have it wrong. But I think it's
I
more
know
like
that
21.
if I add it all up,
yeah,
everything all on tax on, I'll bet I give 55% of my money to an institution that doesn't
to a government
doesn't earn it.
Yeah. No, I have no doubt. Because, but here's the thing. If you were to expand, and the legislature's argument was that as we move to a service economy, that not enough money comes in to fund government because people aren't buying as many goods. Now, I would say the revenue.
Whose fault is that?
Yeah, but wait just a minute. We've increased spending by, again, when you include federal dollars, by over 200% in a decade. I don't think that's actually the problem.
Well, I mean,
we have plenty of money coming in.
Laundering is expensive. It's expensive to send money to Ukraine so it can kick it back.
But this is just state. But think about this. This is what the state spends. And in this tax reform, the big danger is the more things you start to tax, they may be lowering the rate today, but I don't think any of us believe that rate stays low. And the more things we allow them to tax, the more power they have over our lives ultimately, right? To me, that was the biggest problem.
Oh, yeah.
The very biggest problem. But do you know what else I noticed in that bill? That any industry that had aggressive lobbyists had carve-outs.
They did fine.
So when you talk about the complicated nature of our tax system, I believe that is why it's so complicated.
I don't want to do away with lobbyists.
I don't either.
Because
Do you know I'm a
my
lobbyist?
favorite organization on earth is the Gun Owners of America. And that is a lobbyist
Yes.
organization
Hey, look.
that is kicking the ATF's ass this year. The GOA is mopping the floor with the ATF. The ATF is digging out dusty old books to see how they can kill dogs in your yard right now because the GOA is beating them to death.
So I have heard that Gun Owners of America is kind of taking the place. They are the powerhouse on gun rights these days.
The NRA has always been, every gun law that was passed,
Yeah.
the NRA, if they didn't write it, endorsed it. The
Really?
GOA was designed to fight against the NRA.
How long have they been around?
The NRA?
The GOA.
GOA, Handgunners America was 1880 something, and GOA, I think, was 1910-ish.
So they've been around for a long time, but but people keep telling me that they are the most powerful
They're the
firearms.
They're the real ones.
or the most influential.
They're the real. The NRA is still the most influential. But,
Are they?
But
They're very big.
why are they?
Yeah, but
Because
I get-
whenever something happens in a gun law, even if the NRA didn't fight it, who does the media call out?
they call the NRA.
They make the NRA more popular, just like the Pied Piper plan that
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton put to the Clinton News Network and MSNBC Clinton. The
What's
Pied
this?
Piper plan, where she said boost Trump. So all they
how
did,
did I not know about this?
all they did was talk about Trump nonstop, and he got nothing but free. So they've been doing that with the NRA. They built the NRA up because the NRA supported the NFA. The NRA supported the 94 assault weapons ban. The NRA supported all that. The NRA was a party to trying to outlaw handguns in the United States in 1903, I think it was, which is when the Handgunners Owners of America stepped up.
Okay.
And GOA, and there's two others that were there.
But I'm telling you, I think the power is shifting because as I talk to people,
But why won't the media ever mention
oh
it?
no, that could totally
Because
be true.
they want the NRA,
Yeah.
the people who back
Yeah.
what they want, to be the power.
It's like a plumber busting
But there's
the
a
pipes of his
reason.
customer.
There's a reason why I love the Gun Owners of America.
Why is that?
Because they actually go out and fight for our
Okay.
rights.
They fight the NRA.
Where the NRA, they write most of those gun legislation. But the media blames what the GOA
NRA.
does on the NRA. So that when the NRA is called up to bat, the NRA, fakes a bunt and, make sure they don't even make it to first base. And if they do, they trip over the shortstop. They got a plan.
Yeah.
It's too bad. The NRA was born out of greatness and fell on its face. You know where the birth of the NRA? Does anyone know that?
No.
It was Union soldiers that went down and got their asses handed to them by country boys and said, there were Union soldiers from New York City and said, oh, we need to teach you city boys how to shoot guns. And that's where the NRA is.
Oh, that's hilarious, actually. Yeah. New York City's never been as good as the rest of the state. Sorry. Never.
But let's run through some comments.
Okay.
We went through the flag. Okay. It looks like we've got some questions here. Now, I did have one question. This one might be a little tough.
Okay.
All right. Someone asked me offline. They asked me when I told them you were coming on. They asked me a couple days ago. Why didn't you start applying to run prior to Mitt Romney stepping out?
Yeah, because I'll tell you, I was not. I had made a decision not to run, and I still haven't made a decision to run. That I can talk about.
What they're worried about is that you didn't want to challenge Romney.
No, that has nothing to do with it. People need to, we need to be careful about making assumptions before asking questions.
Because it makes
we
an
do
ass
this.
out of you and me.
That's right. We do this all the time in politics. There was a field that we had a few candidates in. We currently have 3 in. There were a few candidates in, a number of names being thrown around, and I was not planning to run. I had chickens and my greenhouse and a new cat and my job, and I'm happy.
What kind of cat?
He's the cutest little black cat.
Have you ever seen a dwarf? What are the naked cats called?
I've seen pictures, yes.
Oh, I work at
Not
a
my
house
thing.
sometimes. The girlfriend, she hates naked cats. This one's a dwarf one, so it's got these little stubby legs.
Oh.
It's the damn cutest
cute.
little shit.
Well, so I have a full life, right? Mm-hmm. And I started getting phone calls. And I seriously have been taking a look at things, talking to people, meeting with people. This is not the kind of thing that you jump into overnight.
Oh, I imagine.
Yeah. And there were a number of names put up for this that a lot of us could have been comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And when it wasn't looking like all of us could be comfortable with our options, again, I started getting phone calls. So I started setting up some meetings and saying, is this something I'm going to look at? And that's why I got in later. But frankly, I have to tell you, I'm somebody, again, with chickens in a greenhouse and a life, and I had no interest in jumping into this race last spring. I work a job. I have things going on. And so to run a race for a year and a half is not something I would have done anyway. But it has nothing to do with the decisions that other people were making to run or not, except for, does it look like we have the best field that we could have at this point in time? And not only could I not get comfortable with that, but a number of people I really trust and respect who understand the lay of the land on these things also couldn't get comfortable with it. And so I started looking at this seriously at that time.
Okay. It's a good answer, by the way.
Yeah,
I just have to, you've been in like the back rooms of the nation's capital, right?
More this capital.
Does it smell like sulfur in there? Like, brimstone? I mean, or do they clean it? They have like a special cleaner, like a Febreze angelic.
My.
I'm just wondering.
Oh my!
I'm Peter Schiff orders.
Anyways. Don't give up those secrets.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we talked about the recent hospital bombing being a hoax. Oh, O'Malley says, I think we need to remember this isn't about the land. They want to kill all Jews.
Yeah, and they've said it.
Yeah.
Right. Like this isn't even a question.
Isn't it saying all but one tree will say, brother, there is a Jew behind me, or something like that. Yeah. All the trees and rocks except for one.
Yes.
Something like that. I don't know. I heard about that somewhere. Okay. They need to give back their people's gun rights for starters. I say Israel dropped the ball on that. Israel.
Okay. Can I say, I actually, because they have their mandatory military service and they're well trained with firearms.
Military service
2 years ain't that much.
Means you're trained-ish in firearms.
Okay, you're better trained than a lot of us.
Own one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually was completely unaware that they do not have guns.
They need to do what the Swiss do.
Oh, it's kind of like New York City.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. Do you think any of them could defend themselves against anyone or anything in that city?
Well, there was a kibbutz.
As two upstate New Yorkers.
There was a kibbutz that was defended by 2 school teachers that were armed.
Really?
Lawbreakers.
They were legally armed. They went through the process, but I think Israel needs to say, when you're done service, carry that firearm home with you, Johnny.
Well, they are
We will provide the locker. You must keep it in, and you must show up to our range day once a year just to express your
I don't even
proficiency.
like that. I don't even like that. The fact of the matter is, they are a population that is at risk of
They're under
annihilation.
siege. Yeah.
And so, but I have to tell you, I hope, and I said this after this happened, that I hope for a lot of Americans that was a wake-up call.
Apparently, word on the street
Yeah?
that a certain gun owners that I've heard talk, because I follow gun stuff, if you haven't noticed. I don't own any guns, I just follow them online. That their Jewish sales are ridiculous right now.
Oh, that's
in the
amazing.
United States, their Jewish sales are ridiculous.
I want everybody to be a responsible gun owner.
Dude, you ain't kidding.
Yeah.
You ain't kidding.
Everybody.
I want the programs to be taught in school.
Oh, well, think
By
about
the
this.
way, O'Malley May teaches a defensive pistol course.
Oh,
so if you ever want to
awesome.
take one,
Yes.
it's
Okay.
it's an
It's
outstanding
worth it.
course.
I'm sure she's an amazing instructor.
Israel is surrounded by 7 hostile countries aside from Palestine, and they don't let their citizens have guns. Shake my head. That is correct. And then she said, "Laugh my butt off, Jared. What did I say? I said something probably, but I don't know what it was.
I don't know.
I talk a lot." Jamie, our last guest, said, "Go Carolyn Phippen." O'Malley says, "What is your opinion on Governor Cox's executive order to have companies pay their employees to do community service?"
I mean, seriously, guys, come on. That community service is not a government program. And once we make it a government program, it's not service.
You can't legislate morality.
No. And the more we try, the less we have. The more we try to legislate morality, the more we lose as a society. Can I give you an example? Do we have time for this?
Yes.
Sure do.
Okay, so I remember writing about this years ago, but it was probably 15 years ago in France. There was a heat wave that wiped out a bunch of their elderly population.
Okay.
And
I
do you
think I
remember this
that.
peripherally?
And
way
it
back
happened in
somewhere?
England at the same time. Didn't theirs?
Italy too.
Was it Italy?
I believe so.
And England? I don't know.
Probably.
Europe. It
Although
was
they're
over
not-
there. Okay.
Yeah,
in
we
Europe.
call them proto-Americans around here. But yes, go on.
So here's the thing. When they looked into that afterward, there was a question of how did this happen, and I saw some of the temperatures, and it's honestly been 15 years since I wrote about it, but. I mean, I swear it was something like 101 degrees or something. Like, how did this kill all these people? And when they looked into it as a country, here is what they felt like the problem was. And that is you had a society where government, and first of all, a lot of them live in older buildings. So there isn't central air in a lot of these places, but temperatures get hot every summer. That's normal. And so maybe this was a couple degrees higher. But what happened was you have a society where government has been put in place of taking care of people
strong
instead of families,
yep.
right? And so when I was reading this one article where they had interviewed a number of people who worked in healthcare, and they said society had begun to really look down on people who cared for elderly people. So children actually, the government's taking care of it. Children stopped checking in on their very own parents
And
because
churches.
the government, yes, community organizations.
When you suck that money out of the community and you put it and
But
government,
here's the thing, it's not only money. You change the way
Yeah.
people view their responsibility to their
the
neighbors.
churches can't afford to do it, but also the families. Honestly, why would you want government to take that over? Government is incompetence on parade.
Yes.
Government, where's the success?
You're asking for metrics and data?
Just tell me a government plan that was
Yeah.
a success.
Yeah.
You don't have to lay out a big one, a small one.
Yeah.
I'll bet if our national government decided to mow the fucking lawn around the Capitol building, they would fail. Am I right? They hire someone to do it.
Yeah,
because they know they couldn't get that shit done. AOC would lose a toe. Peter Schiff would have to explain to Satan why he can't be for that meeting that afternoon. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, no, and here's
Government,
the thing too.
look at what happened in Lahaina. That burns my ass like you wouldn't
yeah.
believe, because government killed people there.
That's exactly right. Yeah, at the very least, it was government incompetence.
Killed people.
At the very
And
least,
government
Yeah.
fails at everything.
At everything. And for a whole host of reasons. We could spend hours talking about what those reasons are, but you are correct.
There's a reason
it's
the
never
U.S.
fail. Yeah.
The U.S. exploded on the world like nothing before in becoming the economic powerhouse that the rest of the world came to and asked to run the world.
Yep.
And that's because we had little government.
Can I tell you?
But they did that at a time when we just elected a shit brick that was making us have more government. And they carried on momentum until
That's
now.
right. Yep. And now we have an expectation the government will take care of these
Everything.
things. Like, seriously, community service is not paid for by government mandate through your employer. It takes the word
service right out of it.
Like this, so I remember reading this book like a decade ago. This guy was actually a professor at Syracuse University and then went on to run AEI, American Enterprise Institute. I can't remember any names on a Friday night, but he had this book called Who Really Cares? And it is loaded with statistics. I think he wrote it while he was at Syracuse as a professor. And the whole thing documents the what drives people, and what ideologies drive people, what belief systems drive people. It talks about the actual giving of. Here's the funny thing, giving comes from the right significantly more than the left. But hold on a minute, the reason it's a little bit skewed when you take out politics and only look at religion. It is religion that drives the giving, not the politics.
It's religion,
but the politics align with the religion. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
most often,
it's religion and moral philosophies.
Yes. Well, it when it comes right down to it, it's religion. Not for everybody, but when you look at what drives the groups, it is those who have. You're right. A religious philosophy.
Well, yeah, but the new religion that's born right now that we're living through the
okay, you're right. The religion of wokeism. I mean, I don't love that term. It is a religion.
It has original sin.
It has all the
earmarks. It just doesn't have being bathed in the blood of the lamb yet. Once they figure that out, I think we're going to see prophets and all that shit.
You know, it's kind of weird you would talk about that because me and my wife were having a conversation about tipping the other day. And she used to work at that Eckert's Theater. And she was at the concession. And the Republican type events yielded much less tips than Democrat type events. So I don't know, maybe that applies in the form of a different type of giving, but yeah, she has noticed that.
Maybe tipping sits outside that paradigm, and that'd be something to look into.
But here's the thing. I've been told that in Washington, D.C., it's opposite that. So I am curious, like...
Oh, maybe it's the
really
weak party. The weak party shows more compassion.
But when you look at these overall statistics, that actually isn't the case. It is religiously driven, and there is an overlap with party. But it is not just, but it maybe the types of giving differ. But when you look at it, it is all the way down to giving blood. No kidding. It's giving blood.
Yeah.
It's doing service to your neighbors, doing service for your neighbors. It is giving money. It is giving time in every way. These statistics are pretty clear. And a lot of it, think about it this way. When government, you can say that government can take the place of religion. So that's an interesting anomaly. I don't doubt it. But you can say that government takes the place of religion, but here's what it misses. It can only substitute for so long because there is a virtuous cycle with people, right? You give to me, you feel love for me because you know that you're helping somebody who needs it. Yep. And I feel gratitude to you because you're helping me when I need it.
Yep.
Right? But when I pay the tax man, I'm not feeling any love. And when you get that check from the government, you aren't feeling
Somebody's got
gratitude.
to pay for these kids.
That's
I
right.
remember that lady saying that.
So think about what that does to
I
society.
got 10 kids and somebody's got to pay for
Or the
these kids.
Obama phones, remember that? Like you change the culture
Do you remember
when you insert government in.
Someone had those people thinking that he was going to buy them all houses.
Probably the media.
Dude, how embarrassing is that?
Jeez.
To be the person known for yelling, I got my Obama phone.
Come on. She's probably on YouTube, like checking out how many clicks she got.
Yeah,
I don't know.
like-
Someone did a follow-up with her. I can't remember.
Oh,
it,
really?
But she was an anti-Obama activist shortly after that.
That's
wild.
I
interesting.
think about something. But anyways, let's get back to
Okay,
these.
we'll go back.
All right. O'Malley says Greg Hughes doesn't support Trent Staggs. Okay, we need to follow up with Greg Hughes. Apparently,
Yeah, he doesn't.
I would like to follow up
Yeah.
with him just to see how he's doing.
Yeah.
And what
He
are
and
his
I
future
are close
plans?
friends.
What's his-
You know what? He is staying pretty busy he does work with the Sheriff's Association.
Good.
He also is on Rod Arquette on Wednesday nights.
Good. Oh, Sylvester the
And-
Cat. Don't get Dave on. Dave likes to flip Rod Arquette's lid once a week.
I do. I
Call-
provide the Utah
Dave-
pushback.
Dave is he grew up LDS as well, but Dave is on the libertarian side of Republican, and I am on the radical side of libertarian. And so Dave will call and ask him about some of our laws in Utah and why we have them, and Rod generally just hangs up on him.
Well, I'm a conservative, so I would hang up on you too, possibly.
Yeah. Well, I just wonder, like, why does a Republican and a conservative support, as Dave would ask, the ABC?
Yeah, I do think that's really interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know?
but that is more of a conservative position than a libertarian position. I struggle with that a little.
Yeah,
I
the
don't.
libertarian position is why can't you sell guns and hand grenades in the DABC? I want one-stop shop.
I do get the argument there. But I
want
also
the Walmart of alcohol stores. I want the Walmart / Jerry Seiner M1 Abrams.
With a drive-through.
Yeah,
But here's
I want to be able to pull in, buy my M2 Bradley, buy my M24 sniper weapon system, my whiskey, pack of smokes, untaxed,
yeah.
of course.
See, we would disagree on some of these things, and that's okay because
What things
that's
would we
not even
disagree
what
with? Oh.
Look. I do think I'm
I
okay.
know smokes are bad.
I'm okay with government. You do your thing, man, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm okay with government placing limits on things like alcohol.
Okay.
Because that is, and I so don't want to get into this discussion today, but because that is something just like drugs, there are impacts that are societal, that are
Sure.
long lasting. And I got into like a multi-hour discussion one time with some guys from Libertas over this.
Libertas.
Yes, and here's
Let me ask
the
you a
deal.
question.
Yeah.
If heroin wasn't illegal but was regulated yet legal, do you think fentanyl would have got on our shores?
Yeah, but here's the thing. I'm not going to make decisions based on those types of anomalies. Fentanyl is coming in because we have an open southern border.
I think it would come in regardless.
Oh, some of it would. The majority
I think
is coming across that
regardless.
southern border.
You know why fentanyl is the number one choose to travel?
No, I don't.
Because if I wanted to carry same value of heroin to fentanyl,
Yeah.
I would need
Weight
a
and
envelope
size.
versus a semi
Yeah.
truck.
Yeah. But let me tell you this. When
That's
it
why
came,
marijuana is stronger now than it was 40 years ago.
Oh, I have no doubt. But listen, in the state, and I don't want a big drug discussion, but in the states where we were all told that if marijuana would be legalized, that the illegal trade would go down. It has not. I looked at some stats about a year ago. It has not in the states that legalized it. It has not decreased.
Sure.
And so I don't know that you cut out, you look them up. I doubt things have changed in the past year.
If you're smoking marijuana legally or illegally. If you're smoking it legally, it would have to go down.
Could that be a price point difference?
Yeah, unless the government's charging more than the street dealer.
First of all, because anytime you have regulation, there are taxes and things on it, right? So it was
you got a price point difference?
Yes, you have a price point difference. So you have no controls. So when you talk about fentanyl, the same thing is going to happen.
I don't think
society,
fentanyl would show up. I don't think it's here now, but I don't think it would have been here.
Yeah.
Now, I am not a drug
agree.
user. I do drink, but I don't use drugs. I'm not a user of marijuana, but I do think, and I used to be, I'm a complicated touch point with, if we were to legalize all of it, I think we need to legalize it, but we can't do the radical things that Portland did. You can't legalize drugs and defund your police at the same time. Right? You can't do that.
Yeah, but so you're acknowledging that there are more societal costs.
There are hazards with drugs.
Yeah.
But I also recognize that I think you philosophically corrupt your justice system when you are going to start charging crimes where there's no victim.
But you're saying there's no victim, and that's just where we disagree.
Well, a person victimizes themselves.
Yeah, but that almost always leads to changes in society. We're talking about changes in society with government policy. That leads to changes in society that touch me.
I feel the same way about McDonald's. If I could ban McDonald's, because I look at a lot of the people today, and I think about how much
those are not equal. And I'm perfectly happy to get to make the case when
they're not
he's
equal.
done.
Which one has a bigger cost on our healthcare system?
No, but what I'm saying is that one actually has a purpose as food, whereas drugs are purely recreational. So you cannot equate those two. But go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Well, I think of all the people that work in hospitals that have to lift these overweight people up so that they're comfortable and they blow out their backs, and then they have to get lifted up and then they blow out the backs. Before you know, everyone's blown out their backs trying to lift that person in the hospital.
No, we have massive societal problems. I'm not going to argue with that.
Or just getting insurance where insurance prices are ballooning because the number one health problem that insurance deal with is self-imposed obesity and heart problems.
It is. Do you know, I have a sister who lives back east, and her, after Obamacare, like, we've always purchased our own health insurance. That is so expensive. I think it's tripled now since 2014 with it's varied between a $5,000 and $7,000 deductible, right? And I'll tell you, after Obamacare passed, one of the big things that we saw, and I know this because I was part of the team with Greg Hughes that fought back Healthy Utah, which was Obamacare Medicaid expansion, which was expansion to a mainly single able-bodied population that refused to work even part-time. Okay, in order to qualify, that was pretty much what was going on there, and we beat that back. It got passed by the citizens a couple years later because it sounded like free healthcare would be awesome, and now we're going to have trouble funding our education system as a result, which we warned about before. But I will tell you that I know that we started seeing this not very long at all after the passage of Obamacare, and that is that we were told that Obamacare would solve the problems of people not being able to pay medical bills, right? You know what it did? We had deductibles that ballooned so high that people weren't able to pay their deductibles, and hospitals were literally closing down. Hospitals that were able to stay in business pre-Obamacare were either closing down, a lot of rural ones closed down, or they were bought up by large hospital chains to sustain them.
Grantsville had a clinic.
Really?
Yep.
And they no longer do?
Well, they've got a new one that tried open, but it's more specialized. But it's a general practice clinic. Now you got to drive up to Tooele for it.
Really? Yeah, no, it changed. It changed everything about our healthcare system.
But when insurance companies write the law, you can't expect it to be
right.
perfect.
Yeah.
But right.
Fascism has to fascist.
Yeah. I think
Statist's gonna state.
Yeah, we're realizing that's where we are on a whole lot of things, right? Yeah.
So I will also. I think our prescription medicine programs here in Tooele need to improve. I know I've been to the emergency room and the doctor's like, well, we'll give you this medicine. Well, okay. Guess what? The pharmacy closes at like 7 o'clock and I'm not out until 9. So you want to know what? All those people telling us to throw away our prescription drugs. I just want to say thank you for those who have helped me in times of need. And that wasn't the pharmacy.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing. I know heroin's on the streets, and I would much rather the pharmacist down at Birch give out the right amount and advice on how to use it.
Yeah, no thanks.
And an option for help.
Yeah.
Because right now, the heroin dealer, he's not given an option for help.
No, I know,
And
but again,
he's
change.
stepping on that bastard. He's stepping on it.
Yeah.
I'm a graduate of the drug interdiction school, and the shit they step on it with, they told me about, rocked my world. So, we got
a laughy face on her.
Did we? They're laughing.
Weaponization of federal agencies. Can I tell you? I may have skipped a little. I just saw that.
What's your stance on the border and Utah's policy regarding illegal immigrants? You covered that just a second ago.
Yeah, we have a border problem. When it comes to Utah policies regarding illegal immigrants, this is kind of funny because it's not funny, but it's funny because recently we had a bit of a controversy where the feds tried throwing Utah under the bus to try to get the state and local governments to do what the feds want them to do. And I'll tell you how I know this. I had met with federal agents under this new administration who told me that this administration was the problem. Now, we have an issue with our local law enforcement, our sheriffs, not wanting to enter into contracts with the federal government to do the federal government's job. The federal government, do you remember under Obama, we started hearing a lot about how federal agents would not pick up illegal aliens after they'd served their time for committing crimes or after they were picked up by local law enforcement. And there were were they detainers or something they were called? Like these short-term holds, right? So it is the federal...
And when local sheriffs would pick them up, the feds wouldn't come.
They wouldn't come and get them.
They wouldn't come and get them from the local. So the locals would just have to let them go.
They would have to let them go.
Because, one, they're not equipped to adjudicate that. That has to be adjudicated on a federal level.
And we're in this, like the courts have ruled on that, right? I would love it if our local government could do something. The courts have ruled on this. So there was a recent controversy where the feds wrote a memo that they leaked to make it look like it was the sheriff's responsibility and fault. But this is the same policy that they're talking about, and some people didn't realize that. The same policy that we heard about under Obama where the feds are refusing to pick people up. Now, there are contracts that local sheriffs can enter into with the feds where we house them. But here's the thing. Do you know that if we sign these contracts, if our local sheriffs sign these contracts, they are required to provide a separate barber for illegal aliens than our inmates have? They are required to provide better food. They are required to allow them or to give them separate entrances and exits. They get treated better than our people, and we have to build. The only way we can accommodate it in most places right now is to build new facilities. Now, some administrations, while we've entered into these contracts, some administrations have not checked things out very thoroughly, so we've been able to make it work. The Biden administration, the Biden administration is holding our feet to the fire. We would need to be building new local facilities to house them. We can't afford to do that. And again, we're only in this situation because the feds are refusing to pick them up.
Can the local facility be a Greyhound bus with a one-way ticket to Tijuana?
Well, I do think it's pretty interesting what some border state governors are doing.
Oh, dude, that is fantastic.
Yep.
That is send it to the places that called for it.
That's right.
Unless that's what Cox means by community service. Like we all have to go in and drive some specific type of resident to another location.
Yeah, and can I
I
say,
can get behind that.
Can I say, we talked about this before we came on. Truly, I want a wide gate with a tall wall. Come through legally, be a part of our society, and love our country.
I want to make it easier for you to attain a green card or citizenship or a sponsorship.
Yep.
I want to make it easier, but I want to make it so that if you don't follow those legal
Correct.
manners,
These are our laws.
then it's a punishment.
Yes.
And the punishment is, oh, you come from Guatemala? Which country doesn't like Guatemala? Okay, you're going to Haiti. And that's where we drop you off. Oh, we got confused and send you home country. Oh, too bad.
Now, still, though, that would punish me, the taxpayer, because that's still an expensive endeavor. Now, these people that come in
It'll be an
illegally,
expensive
I have to pay
it'll
for
be-
this transportation.
It's
It'll
expensive
be an
anyway to look
expensive
at it.
endeavor twice.
Now, I'm thinking maybe...
I'm thinking Jose had come through, and then you'd see the cry out story on We On News about him. They dropped me off in Guam, and this place sucks, and I don't speak the language. And then Guillermo, we'll drop him off, or whatever, pick the name. We'll drop him off in another shithole, and then no one else will try it.
And can I tell you,
when it's easier to do it legally?
right?
Why wouldn't they?
No,
just do that?
literally, I was just talking 1 week ago to a friend of mine who brought his family here legally from Brazil. Extremely successful businessman in Brazil. Their funny thing, their currency is tanking right now. Why would Brazil's currency be tanking when the world is being flooded with dollars?
Yep.
I can't figure out why that would be happening.
Well,
but it
they
is.
also
You saw their election,
Lula.
right?
No, but literally this happened in 0809. It happened in 2015. And that is that developing nations, their currency was tanking against the US dollar because every time we pump out these dollars, they are like not weighted, that's not the correct word, but I'm going to use it, against the dollar, and it negatively impacts their currency.
Yeah.
And these people are already poor. But
Do you think when they inflate us, it doesn't hurt a country that measures their economy off the dollar too?
Well, that's right, right?
Yeah.
And they all do. So here's the thing. So he's telling me, I mean, he's fine. He wasn't complaining, but his
wife's from Brazil. That's why.
Oh, is she?
That's why
Yeah.
we know all the ins and outs of that.
So they've had massive, financial losses at home that they've been dealing with, but he wanted to come here to raise his children, right? He came legally, his family came legally, but the hoops they are still jumping through after a few
Ridiculous.
years
How much did
is
it cost him?
unbelievable.
You can't be a middle class person and make it here.
Right.
There's a reason
Especially
why
with
everyone
yeah.
says, "Oh, well, when they measure, well, look at these immigrants are doing so well." Yes, the illegal immigrants have to be the upper echelon of their country.
It's so hard now.
But we want to make it so that their middle class, even their lower middle class, can shoot their shot.
That's right.
If you
Opportunity
or
is
even
what the US
part-time
is
their
about.
shot. And then
Yes.
for anyone, the next more on this is, well, what does it say on the Statue of Liberty? What did we write on the Statue of Liberty? That's what that governor of your guys' home state said. We didn't write it. The frogs did.
And I do call it, I do say I'm a former New Yorker.
Yeah.
So what was it that you were going to say, Alex?
You guys are in exile.
Well, when you're coming from another country, if you drop $500,000 on a business, you can pretty much get your papers.
Yeah.
But most people don't have $500,000 to drop.
No.
And
that or you find a young Air Force man and,
or they find you.
Either way. Anyway.
It was fate, Jared. It's not like it was.
I know, you stole her from her ex-boyfriend. I've heard the story. Okay.
Okay, weaponization of federal agencies. I say this all the time and I'll say it again. If we were not printing all the money that we're printing, federal agencies would not have the ability to be weaponized against us. It needs to stop, and it's occurring because we're funding them to the degree we're funding them.
That, and also we have an adversarial government.
We haven't had what government?
We have an adversarial
Oh, an adversarial government, absolutely.
Our government
Yes.
is adversarial. Our government does not work for the populace. And I don't care if you're a Democrat right now, you need to know this. Your government doesn't work for you. Your
That's right.
government doesn't care about you. Your government
It has nothing to do with
your
you.
government will gladly kill you to keep their power and their ways. They don't care. They don't care what your political leanings are. The only time they would care about you is if by killing you, it would harm their standing. That's it. Period. End of discussion.
Sounds lovely.
We have an adversarial government.
We do have an adversarial. I can agree with that part.
Our government has gone from a parasite. All governments are parasites, to a predator. We have entered the stage of predator. All right.
Okay.
O'Malley says Dave wears that shirt because he's a shit stir. Instigator. Yes, he does. And
Sometimes I do, yeah.
it's a fairly comfortable shirt. I have one too. I'm sophisticated enough.
Your
not to
tax
wear one
dollars
shirt.
probably bought it.
Probably. It says McKay on the back. Anyways, what's your opinion on Brad Wilson? That's the midget comedian, right?
Brad Wilson is the current Speaker of the House. I've
Oh,
worked with
yeah,
Brad on a
okay.
number of things. He's running for this U.S.
You know,
Senate
it's also
seat.
a midget comedian.
Stop.
He's hilarious.
Stop. Okay.
There is a Brad Wilson.
Oh, there really is?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
hilarious. He's one of my favorite.
I may
comics.
have to look him up. But
Yeah.
so, no, I've worked with Brad on a lot of things. Look, Brad's in this race, Trent Staggs is in this race, as is Rod Bird, who's the Roosevelt mayor. I have a good relationship with every one of them.
Yeah.
Right? I have different opinions about how things ought to be accomplished. I have ideological opinions at times. And I feel like if I were to get in, I would be the best candidate in the race. So I have differences about kind of viability as well. I'm friends with every one of them.
Yeah.
And I actually really dislike, we talked about this, I think at the beginning or before we came on, I really dislike personal attacks, period. I like everything to be based on policy. I see the world differently than Brad Wilson in some respects, and the same in other respects. I met with him during the legislative session along with Thomas Young, who the economist who I wrote that op-ed with, because we were... A number of groups had been working on larger income tax cuts for the people of Utah than we were getting. I met with him. At this point, a lot of those negotiations had taken place, but we were going to be running this op-ed, and I wanted to just give him a heads up and say, hey, you know what? We think that there's a whole lot more the state could be doing, should be doing. This is the people's money. There's a $5 billion above trend surplus, and more of it should be coming back, at least double, we felt like.
Yeah.
So, I have a relationship, and he's a decent human being. I don't like any kind of personal attacks, and I hope I wouldn't be personally attacked either.
Good.
It takes away from the campaign when people attack personal issues that make no difference.
And I will criticize on policy all day long, right? I think that's what this should be. That helps us really know. I don't consider that negative campaigning. Some people do. I think it's constructive.
I do think policy is important because that's what governs, not the size of your hands or the color of your skin.
Correct. Yes.
And it's not Brad Wilson, it's Brad Williams, is a comedian.
Oh, Brad Williams.
I apologize. Okay. But anyways, he's hilarious. And most of his jokes are about how he's a small person. It's great. O'Malley May. Now, I have to say, O'Malley May is from Midgrad, or what is it, Stalinville. She's from one of those gulags over the mountain. But she says, yes, our taxes are still going up.
Well, and local taxes are. I keep looking at what is occurring with schools and how.
Did you see the monstrosity they're building on the way into Tooele? Oh, they're building the temple, but right next to the temple, they're building this school is huge.
Huh?
It's the biggest school I've seen.
Seriously,
it is insane. Of course, it's got the fancy architecture because, you got to stroke your ego.
Well, they're trying to compete with Corner Canyon. Have you seen Corner Canyon?
I haven't.
Although I will say, it was, from what I was told, like $40 million less than a much uglier school that was built about the same time. And I'm not going to say the name of that
the school they're building isn't ugly, but...
No, Corner Canyon is beautiful.
Why do they have to...
The architecture is beautiful.
Why do we have to spend our money like that?
I know. And I will say this. I agree with you. I have been told that it doesn't cost any more.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's free.
It's free.
Pull it right out of
But
that.
can I tell somebody said this to me during the last downturn. In fact, my father said to me, he said, you know what is really striking to me is that when I drive up and down I-15, what I notice is the most beautiful buildings that have recently gone up and are going up, every single one of them is a government building.
All
every
government.
single one.
All government,
Yep.
and it's always been that way. And it's ridiculous.
Or
It's-
a bank.
Good point.
There's nothing with government involved in banks.
No.
Yep.
Nothing.
I repeat myself.
Okay, she says, and the bird flu. Okay.
The
Yeah. The bird flu is, Holly says, I love Carson Jorgensen.
So do I. I just talked to Carson last night.
You know what? I think he did good. He pissed off the Republicans around the state, from what I understand, or the Republican higher up echelon.
Some Republicans.
Yeah, they were mad that a person who, makes a living with their hands and not with their ability to fund other people making a living got in there.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that was a good step. I think we need a mix of both, but we shouldn't push out people who actually earn their money and have calluses and such.
Yep.
Where are we at? NRA can bite my rear end. Yes, they can, O'Malley. Okay.
You were talking
Why
about
they laughed. Oh, Mozambique. Mozambique is a military term from back in the day.
Oh.
Now it's called a failure drill because we had to go politically correct when you execute someone. But Mozambique was
that's what you were talking
two to
about.
the
I
chest,
didn't understand
one to the
it.
head. That's Mozambique.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
that was Mozambique. Unless you trained in the 90s, you wouldn't understand that term. It's probably called the John Wick now. Well, it's a failure drill in official terms, but John Wick would work. I like that. Oh, O'Malley May shows up with her normal question. Dave's going to ask about sugar and Bitcoin. O'Malley May is going to say, do you listen to Jesse Kelly?
I listen to Jesse Kelly when I used to do a podcast with Kim Coleman. And I would always be driving 2 nights a week when Jesse Kelly was on, and I would listen to him. But I am finding myself, we stopped doing the podcast about a year ago, and I'm never in a place where I'm flipping on the radio in the evening when he's on anymore. So only if I'm in the car at that time.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you're super busy, it's hard to seek out those traditions.
It is true. I have like I said, I'm a mother of 5 boys. My oldest just turned 30 and my youngest is 15. And so I really, really like my evenings with my boys.
Yeah, and your chickens, and you get to build
I
that
know.
bond. And we could go into a
Chickens
whole...
refuse to bond. I'm telling you, they
We
refuse to
could go
bond.
into a whole side point. I've heard that if you raise them as chicks and they're around you a lot, that they actually do.
Yeah.
Like they'll mother hen you. But I've heard a side point. As you get older and you have younger kids, and I notice this like with my siblings' kids, when you're young and have kids, there's still a rush in you.
Yes.
But when you're
yes.
older,
Yep.
you've molded into your life and you want to.
I'm a different mother completely.
And I'll bet his
Yeah.
older brother's like, that kid is so spoiled.
They say it all the time. Well, yeah. They
Because
always like,
he gets all
wait
your
just
time.
a minute.
You're
Wait
not going to
just-"
miss a ball game.
No, I never have.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I've always
when
been,
you're
not
younger-
that I've never missed, but I've been
When you're
intensely
younger-
involved with my kids even younger.
But
I was
when-
too involved.
Oh, you're one of those.
Tiger Mom?
I was kind of, okay, my kids start violin at the age of 3.
Oh, shit.
Dang.
And let me tell you,
She's chasing the Chinese moms.
and,
That's what she's doing.
and I will tell you,
She's-
my oldest son's a hippie, and I directly attribute it to that
You did it.
style
You
of
run it.
parenting.
You run it. But-
and he's amazing. I
But
love
it's,
hippies.
it's not just that. But when you're younger, like especially like say if your husband had the more 9-to-5 job, he probably had a harder time to make it to every game, or to make it to every event and
Yeah.
to build that up. Whereas nowadays, where you're set more in your ways and you've moved up that ladder,
and you don't have little kids at home.
You've gained more liberties too.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you're older, you've been at your job longer, so you got more vacation acquired. You got more they depend on you more, but with that depending on you more, they also give you more liberty.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, so I was home for 20 years raising kids. And I always was kind of involved. I always was involved in
violin
things.
at 3.
I know. And here's the thing. We did
You
violin.
brought home a B, that means barely made it.
Here's the thing. I was raised in a family with 5 girls, and then a brother was the youngest. He was like 12 years younger than me. Girls are a totally different beast, right?
Yeah.
A beast might be the right word. But
Yeah.
so
They require more direct, in the moment attention, but when the boys require attention, there's blood and hair on some.
I literally was like, what do I do with these crazy children? Like my boys, every one of them, ultra active, always.
Yeah.
And we did music mainly because
Which I have to
I
say-
wanted discipline.
Good on you. No, music, I think, is important. I wish I'd have learned
Yeah.
to play anything, but music, I think, is just looking around the world. Like, I think the most intelligent people that I like to pop in and listen to, like Coleman Hughes, you all see that they have a background in music because I think that wires your brain
Yeah.
to work in different ways than just tactile.
Yes.
It teaches you to listen.
Well, and
That too.
not just listen, but it wires you to think different.
Yes,
it wires
it does.
you to think
And studies show that.
in clarity, but also beauty.
Yep.
And also and they're learning to make their hands do different things, which makes this brain get more
Yep.
wrinkles in it. I
Yep.
think get your kids into music. If I was to tell anybody one thing, get them into any kind of music.
And I'll tell you, when they're 14, they're allowed to quit because by the time you're in high school,
Yeah.
you do your thing. And we were pretty intense when they were younger, at least for the oldest.
Yeah, of course.
3 or 4.
Little tiger mom. You show up.
And I'll tell you,
A means acceptable. C means can't have dinner.
I had kids who were teaching each other to read, so
Out of
they
fear.
were kind of doing their own thing.
Right.
And they most of them were driving themselves quite well, but I had I have one son who is just hilarious. So I let them quit at 14. He ended up switching to cello when he was younger because he wanted to sit. And I was like, that's not a good enough reason, but it was for him and it worked for him. And in high school, he'd go to his cello lessons, downtown, we're in Draper, drive home, never pull his cello out the whole week, and go again the next week. And my husband would look at me and say, why are we paying for those cello lessons? I said, you know why we're paying for those cello lessons? Because Margaret, by the way, his hippie teacher, I don't know, she's kind of a hippie. Because Margaret loves him. And he goes and he sits and plays the cello with Margaret for 30 minutes a week as a high schooler. And he loves it.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to keep paying for that lesson.
Well, and I'm telling you, get your kids into music, any kind of, and I agree with you. Get them into it young, and let them pop out if they want to when they're older.
And then they have the ways of thinking. You know, the other thing I wanted them to learn, I wanted them, you can see it in something like music. I wanted them to learn that when you put in effort, the end result looks different.
Well, and seriously, the smartest political minds right now are all musicians.
Huh.
Coleman Hughes, do you know who he is?
I know the name, but I couldn't
Yeah.
say.
Coleman Hughes, he's like his degree is in music.
Yeah.
But he's a political mind that I really like to listen. He's the guy that argued with Ibram X. Kendi about why you shouldn't get he's a black guy.
Why you shouldn't get what?
Reparations.
No.
Why
Interesting,
reparations
yeah.
are
There's an interesting
deleterious on
Yeah.
the people and the society.
Huh.
And he argued in front of Congress.
Huh.
But he's a musician and he's brilliant. And then you got Ibram X. Kendi, which I think that guy might know left from right. Maybe. But he's a college graduate.
Yeah, isn't that interesting how that's going down?
We're getting big. Okay, we got through the mandatory. Jesse Kelly, yes. What's your thoughts on
Envision Utah.
Envision Utah?
What is Envision Utah?
It's Cox Plan Society.
Yeah, I think it was before Cox, because I remember when I was working at the house that they were around. I don't know. Look, I don't know the genesis of them, and frankly,
World HO. Davos.
I'll tell you what I think the number one issue in our society overall is, and it is organizations driving policy everywhere you turn.
Yep.
Right? We have organizations with parent organizations that exist in Washington, D.C., and they feed all the way down at every single level.
If our government wasn't so involved in our lives, they would not be doing that. They would go out and sell these ideas to the public who has to live with them.
Well, and think about this. These organizations, I don't know how Envision Utah specifically is funded, but most of these organizations, I know they get some government money. I don't know if it's completely funded with government money. Most of these organizations are funded with our taxpayer dollars to indoctrinate the people we elect. Well, let's just say this, to sell a narrative to the people we elect that is consistently in opposition to the will of the regular guy on the street.
And also, I think what they do is they show up and they say, here's some money for your state. And the next year, here's some money for your state. And the next year, here's some money for your state. And the state gets used to that. And the state keeps spending
Do you know what else happens?
And then they show up and they say, we can't give you the money for your state this year unless you do this. And the state's like, we depend on that now.
Do you know, and I don't know
Because
if that's the
there's
case,
not
but
a
listen.
governor
Sounds
with
like a good idea.
balls big enough in the first instance when the Department of Education shows up
the
to
federal
say,
government, yes, but these
But
organizations,
any of them,
no,
they need to
that's what
say
the federal
from
government
the
does with
start.
everything. Yes,
the federal government,
Yes.
but also these organizations. We need a governor who's got balls.
Yeah.
I want clankers.
And who understands.
I want him to say, kick rocks.
Yeah,
right
but
off the
listen
start.
to this. I think sometimes we discount, when it comes to these organizations, we discount the influence that comes simply by them saying they're the experts.
Oh, yeah.
That is massive.
Yeah, the
and
expert class.
I realized years ago as I
How'd
was...
they do for us?
I know, but that goes to measuring results, and no one does that.
Words
So-
are like spells. That's why they call it spelling. When they produce these words of expert, they cast their little spell upon you, and you all of a sudden think, oh, well, if they're saying he's an expert, then I better listen.
And when you're pulled in, you're told, these are the guys, they bring us the studies, they tell us the
Great
stuff.
sandwich bar when they do that too.
And think about
Free
it.
coffee.
Our money funds the studies. It funds the organizations through membership fees in many
What
cases,
was that UN
sometimes direct
study
funding.
that got found on environmentalism that got found to be bunk with the Angel study?
I don't know.
It got found to be bunk. It was a big deal.
But
But
if
that's
you-
why we've got all these environmental shit.
Yeah, well, if you want to look at some of the, we're not going to do it today because it's a Friday night.
Yeah.
But, and this could go on for hours.
It might.
But let me tell you, you want to look at the UN. When I talk to people who are big on, we have to do this and this and that in order to address climate change, I always ask them about the IPCC reports.
The Angel study was the faulty one of that.
Okay,
Where they
okay.
built the hockey stick crap.
Okay, yes, came from the IPC, which is IPCC, which is the UN. But I have never talked to a regular person who's on the anthropogenic, which means man-made, anthropogenic global warming train, who even knows what the IPCC is or what their studies or models are.
Well, and then they say all scientists agree, but have you ever you ever looked up the call for study? What is it called? The call for contract study or whatever. When the IPCC put out, hey, we want you to. They don't put out and say, hey, we want you to investigate whether or not
No.
humans are the cause for global warming. They put out and says, we want you to prove that humans do this, and we'll pay you this much when you do. So all the scientists are like, this is going to fund our department.
And even then, they don't all agree. So here's the thing. It was Obama who used the 97% of climate scientists agree.
Yeah.
And I have investigated that. Like, people have written about that. I haven't had to come up with the data. People have written about where that 97% came from. It's absolute, total garbage. It came from it was something like...
Came from Obama. probably.
Well,
Just
it
made
was
up.
something
It
like
wasn't scientists altogether. But
correct,
It was,
and
it
they
was
weren't all climate scientists.
Yes.
And it was 97% of the articles written on a particular thing in a particular time period.
Come into the mic there.
Sorry,
Yeah,
in a
this is good
particular
stuff.
time period when the government was, to your point, funding studies on climate change.
They put out a call to prove something. They don't put out a
That's
call
how
to
they
find
always
out.
do it, yes.
Yeah, and that's how we're getting corrupt. And then you look at it. But
I'm the
there is-
daughter of a scientist
There is one
who only got
climate-
paid by private business. Go
and
on.
that's how it should be.
Yes.
There is one climate scientist that disagrees with that IPCC, and that's the founder of Greenpeace. He comes out against it.
Yeah, and he is not even close to the only one. That
No,
narrative
he's
is
not.
actually starting to break right now.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Because, I mean, let's look at California. Let's look at incompetency on parade. So about 15 years ago, California started saying you have to pour piss into your diesel engines to catch your particulates, right? At the cost of an economy. I mean, it hurt our whole... Diesel is our most important for
Right.
your happy ass to eat.
Right.
The
Yep.
most important is diesel.
Well, look how Germany's economy used to.
Yeah, Germany's
I know.
Well,
doing
they're
well.
going all green, and now they can't
No, no.
afford
They-
And
gasoline.
a bunch of these European countries are turning already.
I mean, at least
right?
France didn't shut down their nuclear power plants, but Germany did. And
Right.
Germany is screwed. Germany's done.
Well, they're dependent on Russia right now, right?
Eh,
For their
us.
natural gas. For
Us
their
now.
natural gas.
What got popped? The Nord Stream 2.
Right.
So now they're dependent on, I think they're getting it mostly from Sweden now, but they're burning lignite coal, which is brown coal, which is the shit coal to burn.
Instead of our clean.
But yeah,
Yeah.
and the lignite plants, so I've heard, take 24 hours to start up and make produce, right? So during the day, during that 7-minute window, north of that tropical parallel, you know, when you've got that 7-minute window of sun and maybe wind, they get that 7-minute window of sun where they're powered by solar, but you can't
Right.
shut those coal plants down.
Right.
So they have to run 24/7.
Yeah, base load. Base load is the issue, and we do not have solutions for dealing with the
Good
base load
job.
power problem.
And
So drill, baby, drill, right?
Yeah.
Angela
Can-
Merkel did good, but
Can I tell you, like, I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Czechoslovakia when it was
Oh.
Czechoslovakia. My companion and I were the first sisters in the country after the wall came down. And we saw, I can't tell you, from when I
what
went
year
in.
were you there?
Oh my gosh. Do you think I'm going to tell you my age? Yeah, I am. It was 91, 92.
So you're 2 years after.
Yes. And I'll tell you the difference between what you saw even in the grocery store when we first got there versus when we left was night and day.
I love the story of when the premier of Russia, which was it Khrushchev, I think. Was it Khrushchev? No.
I remember when he came, when
When he came
one
to
of them
Houston,
came to the and walked into a
Gorbachev,
grocery store.
on his way
I can't
back,
remember who it was.
on his way back to the
this
airport.
was the 80s, man. My memory
On his
doesn't
way
go
back
back
to
that
the
far.
airport, he said, "Stop here." Told his driver, just stop there. Random grocery store. They stop in the grocery store. He walks through, walks out, gets in the car, dead face, drive to the airport. And the reporting is that that on the flight back, he openly cried.
Wow.
And he said, they lied to us.
Yes.
He had never, this is the head of the Soviet Union. And he says, I've never seen that much food in my life. That many choices.
Yeah.
Crazy, huh?
Everything.
And that much, frankly.
And that's
right.
That's in the 80s. You know, we weren't
Yeah.
hopping that much then.
Right.
And he was like, "Holy cow! They lied to us."
Yeah.
They invented a system. Oh, that it was kind of like a fax machine that they used subversively. You know what its number one use was?
What?
To tell everyone where sausage was.
Do you know though?
People would drive
Well, there's
10
Russian
hours.
bread lines for a reason.
10
Yes,
hours
there
to
were.
get their hands on sausages.
No, but I asked people when I was there, did you believe Pravda, which was the Russian newspaper? And people laughed at me. No, they didn't. But when there's no avenue for truth to get through, but of course they still had no idea that we were living the way we were.
No, they didn't know it was that good.
No, but let me give you this story.
But the
too.
Romanians, they knew there was something better.
So I went back for the first time in 30 years last fall, and there I saw the Skoda, which was the car that they produced, right?
Skoda. It was the only good socialist car.
Well, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Maybe for a socialist car it was, right?
Yeah.
And I asked one of my friends, is the mission president there now, and I said, Darren, like, what's the deal? The Skoda's still around? Because they were junk cars, right? He said, oh, yeah, and they are really expensive now.
Wow.
Think about this.
Skoda made a car that they were going to try to compete with Ferrari. Skoda made
recently?
It's called the Lada?
No, the Lada is but no, Skoda made one in the 50s. In late 50s to compete. No, it was the 60s to compete with Ferrari, and then it got locked behind the curtain. Never got out.
Oh, wow. See, that isn't surprising.
It was an
but
interesting
listen
car.
to this. When you have a centrally planned economy, think about that, and then think about what's happening here. When you have a centrally planned economy, you lose innovation.
Oh, yeah.
You lose quality.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like when so my dad holds
you lose time frame.
Yes. My dad holds a patent on the catalytic converter, okay?
Really?
Not the original, but the next one, which was 30% smaller and 30% more efficient. By the way...
Is it the platinum one then?
I don't know. Yeah. But I will tell you this. The original inventor, there were two original inventors of the catalytic converter. My dad was in school at the time. One was a neighbor of ours. Well, they both were neighbors, but one also is a University of Utah graduate for his undergrad, as is my father. And there was a lot of innovation that came through Corning. It was Corning Incorporated that they both worked for, that came through Corning out of the University of Utah back in that time frame because of one of the instructors there. Anyway, it's an interesting history that I need to write down and record at some point, because I've talked to people about it. I didn't know about it till I started talking to some people at the U, frankly, and then went back to my dad and some of his colleagues, and I'm getting these stories, and I'm like, fascinating. But this was driven out of the university. These people were educated by, I think Cutler was the last name of the professor there at the University of Utah. And all of this expertise was developed there that was taken into the original catalytic converter and then the next. 30% smaller, 30% more efficient. But I've watched what happens with, even when we have government grants driving science as far as what we're even looking at and considering when it comes to not even just climate, but like we all want to live and breathe clean air and drink clean water. There's not a single person who would argue with that, right? We want to live on as clean of an earth as we can. But we're focusing government dollars right now not on giving us a cleaner earth, but on creating, and not even the most innovative solutions.
I think we're creating avenues of wealth for the politically connected.
That is the way to say it.
Yep.
I like it. Yeah, that's
Imagine
exactly what we're doing.
This
That's
right
what we're
here
doing.
is the most magical thing that's come around in ever.
Think
The
about
pocket
it.
crystal.
What would happen?
It is destroying our lives, though.
It
Can we
is,
say? Can
it
we
is,
admit it?
but where else can you have
I
the
know.
knowledge of human history in your pocket? Imagine if the government had taken this over in throw a year out, what we'd have. If the government had taken it over in 94, right? This would look, it'd weigh about 37 pounds and still have a purse. If the government took this out in 2002, right before the iPhone come out, you might be able to look up movie times, kinda, and it'd be on a green background with black writing. You might get that far. And
We know this.
because government stepped away
know.
from that.
I know.
Because government let the free market manage that. What are the two medical procedures that go down in price and up in quality year after year?
Boob jobs.
Boobs and LASIK.
Yep.
Oh, LASIK.
Yep.
Yep.
because they are.
I knew it about LASIK.
They are
I
not-
obviously never mind. Go on.
They are not
Didn't know it about
government
the other.
controlled. They're not government controlled.
Yeah.
Because
No,
doctors
exactly.
are allowed to
Yep.
deal with them on the free market.
Medicare is not setting the prices for them
Right.
because insurance is.
Yeah,
right.
That's what happened.
The regulation
yes.
is
Yeah.
don't harm your patient.
Yes.
And the doctors are like, we'll get better at not harming our patients and giving them better sight and
Keeping ourselves busier.
better sight.
Yes.
You know?
Yep. I have. LASIK is one of the greatest blessings of my life.
LASIK,
I
I
have
think-
thick glasses.
Yeah.
LASIK is
One day maybe.
Contacts.
One day
LASIK.
maybe I'll do it.
Yeah.
LASIK is
Yeah.
miracle.
It is a miracle.
It's a miracle that doctors figured out that they could shave the eye to make
I
it
know.
the lens that you need.
Yeah.
How many lives, how many well-beings do you think are saved by that one thing? It's amazing to think about.
Yep.
And it's amazing to think that
That was the free market
60
right there.
years ago,
It was that. That's right.
our whole medical system ran on that policy.
Yep.
Think
Yep.
about
With that,
Think about how delicious this Coke would have been had we had free market sugar.
okay, we want to ask two more questions, and
Okay.
we're going to let you go.
Okay.
When will you decide? Do you have a time frame?
When will I decide? I would say be listening to the news over the next couple weeks.
Will you come back on?
There may be a decision that
And
comes out.
you've been a very candid talker. This has been an awesome conversation. And
She
and
talks like a
Thanks
New
for
Yorker.
having me. I do.
You've
I do.
allowed me. No, you
A Mormon from New York.
You talk like a non-politician.
Yeah, thank
You're
you.
willing to.
Thank
you're
you.
willing to
Yep.
dig into the mud with me. And will you come back on and after you decide one way or another? And let's.
Yes.
And
Either way.
either way, we can go into the weeds, whichever direction you decide.
And if you win, we go do the podcast over in your office in DC.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah,
Fair?
if I were to run and win, we would have that conversation.
That's an awesome conversation to have.
I want to do it in there just because I want to see.
Hey,
You know, I'm going through the
look.
hallways. Just smelling, you know.
We would need to invite
I mean-
Tooele County to Washington, D.C. for
I
a
would-
podcast.
I would like to go see it.
Yeah.
I would like to go and have
Sounds
a
like a
direct
movie.
talk. And another thing I would like, and I think this would be important, and
Yeah.
if I could talk to Mike Lee, I'd say that. I'd say, Mike, we talk with your constituents. Once in a while, get back to us on, just reach out. Now, Stewart was great about it.
Oh, Chris Stewart?
Yeah. Now, Mike Lee, he hasn't been so good. And I don't think it's him. I think it's his handlers,
Yeah.
his cadre.
You know what? I have to tell you, I worked for him for 3.5 years, and it can be, they exist in a bubble in the Senate.
Oh, I'm sure.
And
I'll bet he has a cadre.
It's so hard.
One
I know.
guy is packing a melon. Great guy. But,
Oh, he doesn't work there anymore. I asked.
dude, that guy, he has never felt rain on his shoulders. I swear to God.
What's this?
So there we were in Grantsville,
The
and
guy has the biggest head I ever saw in my life. Holy shit.
Okay,
If they were to-
nope. We're not going to talk personal anything.
No, it's not personal. He was a great dude. I
yeah,
like
he's
him.
a great guy.
With the big
He's
head.
a great guy. But it got the feeling because he was out doing a Mike Lee talk and then he came out. And I bet as a senator, you're cloistered up and not allowed to.
Things don't always get through. And
You're not allowed to.
I know. Because think about this. When I was working for him, he said to me one time, I would represent him. I was his intergovernmental affairs advisor in the state. So I already had relationships with the legislators. So that was like the perfect fit for me. I continued working with them and county level officials throughout the state. Okay. And there was one time in a meeting, I said, as I came out, I texted him during it. I said, I want to make sure I'm representing you properly when I take this position. And he didn't get back to me right away because he's a senator, right? And he said to me, he called me after that meeting and he said, Carolyn, if you are ever, and he said, yeah, you're right on You always are. I'm just going to throw that in. He did say that. But he said, if you're ever in that position again where you're about to say something and you just want clarification on my position, he said, you have to understand, I am a guy who at any given point in time has 500 unread texts on my phone.
That's his text.
That's his text.
And I'll
he
bet
said,
his phone probably has to be set up through a switchboard. I'll bet the numbers they give out are to those minions.
I hope so.
Numbers that are given out. But if you have his number, you actually have his number that he has never changed.
Yeah.
But let me tell you.
Chris Stewart was the same.
Was he? And he told me, he said, so if you've got to know right now, I'm probably in a committee hearing or something. If I don't get right back, you just keep sending that same text. You just send and send and send and send. Because there could be 10, 15, 20 coming through and you want to be up at the top. Mm-hmm. Like, think about that. Like, that stresses me out to think about.
I'm sure. And you'll end up in that pickle.
I am look, I'm not even a candidate, and my life is like a teeny piece, and I feel this.
And we're eating the whole cake.
And it's tough. And the way you the way you have to look at it is the senators, like in Rome, or they're the noblemen, and they're required much more time. And the congressmen are like, I think in Rome they called them
Tribunes,
college. What do they call them? It wasn't tribune, but it was at one point it was tribune. But when they actually had, it was college, mm-hmm. and so they're amongst the people. The senators are supposed to represent the state. They're not supposed to be someone that the regular people reaches out. But then again, the federal government went and wrote a new law and screwed up that idea anyway. So it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, right, because it was supposed to be the state legislature.
Yeah. Popular vote,
And now, we keep thinking it will change nothing when we make these changes.
Yeah, I know.
A plug out to Mike Lee. He has a podcast out called Line by Line for the Constitution. And he goes through the Constitution line by line, and he does an amazing job. I recommend.
I'm sure he does.
If you want to learn the Constitution, Mike Lee is the guy to learn it from. He grew up at the dinner table talking Constitution with his father and his family. And this guy, he puts out a fantastic explanation of the Constitution. It's called Line by Line. Look it up on YouTube. Excellent, excellent podcast.
All right. One last comment.
Okay.
Holly says, thank you for coming to our humble county and sharing your ideas with our citizens. I look forward to inviting you out next month for more people to meet and learn about you. And next time you're on, we'll cover the 19th Amendment. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.